Law 1. Never outshine the master. Power does not begin with strength. It begins with ego. And one of the fastest ways to lose power, often without realizing it, is by making the person above you feel small. This is the core warning behind Law 1, never outshine the master. At first, this law feels uncomfortable. It sounds unfair. Why should talent be punished? Why should intelligence be hidden? Why should hard work be restrained just to protect someone else's pride? But power is not a merit system. Power is a psychological system. And psychology doesn't care about fairness. When you work under someone, whether it's a boss, a leader, a mentor, a client, or a ruler, you are not just dealing with their authority. You are dealing with their insecurities, their fears, their need to feel important, their need to feel superior. The moment your brilliance becomes too visible, something dangerous happens. Attention shifts, the spotlight moves, and the master, who once felt confident, begins to feel threatened. They may never say it out loud. They may still praise you publicly. They may even smile. But inside, a quiet calculation begins. If they are this capable, do they still need me? If others admire them, what does that say about my power? If they shine this brightly now, what happens later? This is where many ambitious people make their fatal mistake. They believe excellence guarantees safety. They believe talent earns protection. They believe results speak for themselves. But results don't speak. Egos listen. History is filled with gifted individuals who rose quickly only to fall even faster, not because they failed, but because they succeeded too loudly. They corrected their superiors in public. They showed too much initiative without permission. They made the master feel replaceable. And in the world of power, being replaceable is forgivable. Making someone feel replaceable is not. The punishment rarely comes immediately. It arrives quietly. Opportunities dry up. Trust disappears. Small mistakes are magnified. Support turns into scrutiny. And eventually, the talented subordinate is removed not for incompetence, but for being difficult, arrogant, or not a good fit. The irony is brutal. The very qualities that brought them attention are the same qualities that destroy them. This law does not tell you to be weak. It tells you to be strategic. The smartest move is not to dim your intelligence, but to redirect it. Instead of shining over the master, you shine for him. You let your success reflect upward. You frame your ideas as extensions of his vision. You make it clear, subtly and consistently, that your brilliance exists because of his guidance. When something goes well, they get the credit. When something fails, you absorb the blame. This is not submission. This is camouflage. By feeding the master's ego, you disarm their fear. You transform from a potential rival into a trusted asset. And once a superior feels safe, something powerful happens. They loosen control. They delegate more. They share information. They open doors. In other words, by stepping back, you actually move forward. Timing is everything here. There will be moments when the master weakens, when their influence fades, when their position becomes unstable, when the hierarchy shifts. That is when you step into visibility. That is when your accumulated trust converts into power. But before that moment, patience is your shield. Those who rush recognition often peak early and fall publicly. Those who understand hierarchy survive quietly and rise permanently. At its deepest level, Never Outshine the Master is about emotional intelligence.
It teaches you that power is not about proving you are the smartest person in the room. It is about ensuring that the person with authority never feels that you are a threat to their identity. Because once someone feels threatened, logic ends, and when logic ends, power becomes personal. In the game of power, talent without awareness is dangerous, and the first rule of survival is knowing whose shadow you are standing in.
Law 2. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. Trust feels safe. Friendship feels comforting. And that's exactly why they can be dangerous. Law 2 begins with an uncomfortable truth most people refuse to accept. The people closest to you are often the least reliable when power is involved. Not because they are evil, but because familiarity breeds expectation, entitlement, and emotion. And emotion is poison to strategy. Friends believe they deserve more from you. They expect favors. They assume forgiveness. They confuse loyalty with obligation. And the moment you fail to meet those expectations, resentment quietly replaces affection. History shows this pattern again and again. A ruler elevates a friend, trusting that shared history guarantees loyalty. But friendship blurs boundaries. The friend grows casual, careless, sometimes arrogant. They speak too freely. They forget who holds power, or worse, they believe their closeness makes them untouchable. And when discipline finally arrives, it feels like betrayal. Friends also carry a hidden weakness, envy. Even the kindest friend can struggle when your success outpaces theirs. They may support you verbally, but internally they compare. They measure. They question why you advanced and they did not. That silent jealousy leaks out through hesitation, half-hearted effort, or subtle sabotage. This is why power and friendship rarely mix cleanly. Enemies, on the other hand, operate under different rules. An enemy knows where they stand. They expect nothing from you. When you elevate them, it shocks them. Gratitude replaces suspicion. Effort replaces entitlement. They work harder because they must prove themselves. Their loyalty is not emotional, it is strategic. When you turn an enemy into an ally, they often become more dependable than a friend ever could. They have something to lose. They remember their past position, and they understand the value of the opportunity you've given them. This law does not tell you to destroy friendships. It tells you not to blindly trust them with power. Friendship is personal. Power is transactional. Confuse the two and you invite chaos. The smart approach is balance. Keep friends close emotionally, but distant strategically. Do not place them in positions where their failure harms you or where their success threatens your authority. Enjoy friendship privately, but build power publicly on competence, leverage, and clear roles. When choosing allies, favor those who depend on the position more than they depend on you personally. Favor those who benefit from your strength, not your affection. These people are predictable, and predictability is safety. This law also warns against sentimentality. Power rewards clarity, not nostalgia. Past loyalty does not guarantee future reliability. Circumstances change, people change, and when stakes rise, even old bonds can crack. The ruthless lesson here is not to become cold, but to become aware. Trust must be earned repeatedly, not assumed once. Friendship must be protected from power, not empowered by it. And enemies, when handled wisely, can become your strongest pillars. In the end, Law 2 teaches this: power is not built on who likes you. It is built on who needs you, who respects the position, and who understands the cost of betrayal.
Because in the world of power, affection fades, but self-interest never forgets.
Law 3. Conceal your intentions. Most people reveal themselves too early. They speak too much. They explain too clearly. They show their destination before the journey even begins. And the moment you expose your intentions, you give others the chance to interfere. Law 3 is built on a simple reality. Once people know what you want, they can block it, manipulate it, delay it, or steal it. Transparency may feel honest, but in the world of power, it is often reckless. Human beings are natural pattern seekers. We listen for motives, we watch for direction, we read between the lines, and the second your intention becomes obvious, people begin adjusting their behavior, not to help you, but to protect themselves. Some will oppose you openly, others will smile and quietly work against you, and some will pretend to support you while steering you off course. This is why directness, while admirable, is dangerous when stakes are high. Those who hold power understand something subtle. Confusion is a form of control. When your actions do not clearly reveal your goal, people hesitate, they speculate, they miscalculate, they chase false explanations, and while they are busy guessing, you move freely. History favors the indirect strategist, the ones who advanced by masking ambition behind courtesy, who disguised attacks as favors, who wrapped intention in ambiguity until it was too late to stop them. This law is not about lying constantly, it is about selective revelation. You do not need to tell people what you are building. You do not need to announce your next move. You do not need to justify your silence. The more predictable you become, the more controllable you become. Instead, present decoys, talk about harmless goals, express interest in outcomes you don't actually care about. Allow others to feel they understand you, while you quietly operate on a different level. This tactic does something powerful. It lowers defenses. When people believe they see your intentions, they stop watching closely. They relax. They assume they are ahead of you. And that illusion gives you space to act. Concealing intentions also protects you from premature resistance. Many plans fail not because they are bad, but because they are revealed too early. Opposition forms before momentum exists. Critics attack before results appear. Sabotage begins while the foundation is still fragile. Silence buys you time. Ambiguity buys you flexibility. This law also applies to emotional intentions. When people know exactly how much you want something, they gain leverage over you. They can withhold, delay, or demand more. Desire revealed becomes a weakness exposed. Those who conceal their hunger remain in control. But there is a warning hidden inside this law. Concealment must be subtle. If people sense deception, suspicion replaces confusion. The goal is not to appear secretive, but to appear natural, casual, and unthreatening. Your actions should feel ordinary, even boring, while your strategy unfolds quietly underneath. The most effective operators look harmless until the moment they are unstoppable. In the end, Law 3, Conceal Your Intentions, teaches that power moves best in shadow, not because darkness is evil, but because visibility invites resistance. Say less. Reveal later. Move quietly. Because once people understand your plan, it is no longer just yours. Law 4. Always say less than necessary. Words feel powerful. Silence feels awkward. And because of that, most people talk themselves into weakness. Law 4 delivers a quiet warning. The more you speak, the more ordinary and vulnerable you become. Every extra word is a chance to reveal too much, to contradict yourself, to expose emotion, or to give others information they can use against you. Power, at its core, is control, and control begins with restraint. When you speak too much, you surrender that control. You explain your thinking. You justify your choices. You fill the silence to ease discomfort. And in doing so, you hand people a map to your intentions, your fears, and your limits. Those who hold real power do the opposite. They speak briefly. They pause comfortably. They let others do the talking. And that silence does something unsettling. It creates uncertainty. People are deeply uncomfortable with gaps. When you don't explain yourself, others rush to fill in the meaning. They project their own assumptions. They guess. They worry. They overthink. And while they are busy decoding your silence, you are gathering information. Silence reverses the balance of pressure. The talker reveals, the listener controls. This law does not mean becoming mute or mysterious for the sake of it. It means understanding that words should be deliberate, not emotional. Every sentence should serve a purpose. If it doesn't move you forward, protect you, or strengthen your position, it doesn't need to be said. Powerful people rarely argue. They rarely explain themselves fully. They rarely rush to respond. Instead, they answer selectively. They let statements stand without defense. They allow ambiguity to linger, and that ambiguity makes them appear confident, composed, and untouchable. There is also a psychological advantage here. When you say less, people assume more. They attribute depth, wisdom, and authority to your silence. The less you reveal, the larger you appear. The more you speak, the smaller and more predictable you become. This is why leaders who ramble lose respect, while those who pause command it. Words also trap you. Once spoken, they can be repeated, distorted, weaponized. Promises become expectations, opinions become liabilities, casual remarks become evidence. Silence, on the other hand, leaves no trail. In high-stakes environments, negotiations, leadership, conflict, the person who speaks last usually holds the advantage. They have heard everything. They have given nothing away. And when they finally speak, their words carry weight precisely because they are rare. There is a hidden discipline inside this law: emotional control. Most over-talking comes from the need to be liked, understood, or validated. Silence requires confidence. It requires comfort with not being immediately approved of, and that comfort is a signal of inner strength. Those who can sit calmly in silence signal dominance without aggression. In the end, Law 4, always say less than necessary, teaches that power is not loud, it does not rush, it does not explain itself endlessly. It observes, it waits, and when it speaks, people listen, because words are currency, and those who spend them sparingly stay rich in power.
Law 5. So much depends on reputation. Guard it with your life. Before people know your abilities, before they test your character, Before they hear your side of the story, they judge you by reputation. Reputation is power in its purest form. It works for you while you sleep. It speaks before you enter the room, and once it is damaged, it becomes almost impossible to control what follows. Law 5 warns that reputation is not just an image, it is a shield. Protect it, and you can survive mistakes. Lose it, and even your strengths will be questioned. People do not investigate deeply. They simplify, they label, they rely on shortcuts. Reputation becomes that shortcut. It tells others whether to trust you, fear you, respect you, or dismiss you, often without evidence. This is why attacks on reputation are so effective. They don't need to be proven, they only need to be repeated. A single rumor, if left unchallenged, can grow roots. Silence can look like guilt. Hesitation can look like weakness. And once doubt settles in, people begin rewriting your story without you. Those who understand power act early. They do not wait for lies to spread. They do not assume truth will defend itself. They strike fast, decisively, and publicly. Reputation must be actively maintained, not passively hoped for. This law teaches that it's better to be known for one strong quality than many unclear ones. A sharp reputation, whether for reliability, toughness, brilliance, or fairness, creates predictability, and predictability creates confidence in others. Vagueness invites suspicion. Clarity invites authority. There is also an offensive side to this law. Just as your reputation is your shield, your opponent's reputation is their weakness. Expose hypocrisy, highlight inconsistency, cast doubt on their most trusted trait, and their entire structure begins to wobble. You don't need to attack their actions, attack the image that protects them. Once the mask cracks, everything underneath becomes questionable. But this weapon must be used carefully. Those who attack reputations recklessly reveal desperation. The goal is precision, not noise. One well-placed doubt is more powerful than 1,000 loud accusations. This law also emphasizes distance. Avoid people with bad reputations, not because they are always guilty, but because reputation spreads by association. Even if you are innocent, proximity can stain you. Power demands selectivity. You are judged not only by who you are, but by who you tolerate. Guard your reputation by setting boundaries. Say no publicly when needed. Walk away when silence implies agreement. Make examples of attacks that cross the line. People respect those who defend their name. In the end, Law 5 teaches a hard truth. Reputation outlives explanations. You can explain yourself forever, but people remember what they believe about you. So build your reputation deliberately, defend it aggressively, and never assume it can survive neglect. Because once your name loses power, everything attached to it follows.
Law 6. Court attention at all costs. In a world crowded with noise, invisibility is the fastest way to disappear. Talent without attention fades. Skill without visibility dies quietly. And effort without an audience might as well never have existed. Law 6 delivers a brutal reality. People do not reward what they do not notice. Power flows toward what captures the eye, the ear, and the imagination. If you are not being talked about, you are not being considered.
Most people are taught to avoid attention, to stay humble, to blend in, to wait patiently for recognition. But power does not find those who hide. It finds those who announce themselves, intentionally or not. Attention is a currency, and those who control attention control perception. This law does not say all attention must be positive. In fact, controversy often works faster than approval. Being criticized still keeps you visible. Being discussed, even negatively, keeps you relevant. Being ignored is the only true failure. History rewards the bold showman as much as the skilled operator. Those who understood spectacle rose faster than those who relied on quiet merit. They dressed differently, spoke differently, acted unpredictably. They made themselves impossible to overlook. And once attention is secured, power follows. This is because people equate visibility with importance. If many eyes are on you, you must matter. If your name keeps appearing, you must be significant. Repetition creates legitimacy. This law also reveals a dangerous trap. Those who fear attention often sabotage themselves. They downplay achievements. They avoid spotlight moments. They let others take credit. And in doing so, they allow louder, less capable people to rise above them. Power does not apologize for being seen. To court attention does not mean being reckless. It means being deliberate. You choose when to appear, how to appear, and what image you project. Mystery can attract just as much as spectacle. Silence, when rare, can become an event. Consistency builds recognition. Contrast builds memory. The key is contrast. Blend in and you vanish. Stand out and you invite curiosity. This law also warns that attention must be managed once acquired. Sudden visibility without control can backfire. If you attract attention but fail to define the narrative, others will define it for you. Attention without framing becomes chaos. So, those who master this law not only attract eyes, they guide interpretation. They give people something to remember, something to repeat, something to associate with their name. In the end, Law 6, court attention at all costs, teaches that power is not just about ability, it is about presence. You do not need to be everywhere. You need to be unmissable where it matters. Because in the economy of power, attention is the entry fee, and those who refuse to pay it remain unseen, unheard, and unchosen. Law 7. Get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit. Hard work is respected, but ownership of results is rewarded. Law 7 exposes a truth many people learn too late. Power does not come from effort alone. It comes from positioning yourself as the source of outcomes, while others supply the labor, the ideas, and the execution. Most people believe doing everything themselves proves strength. In reality, it proves limitation. Those who rise quickly understand leverage. They borrow brains, they borrow hands, they borrow time. And then they assemble those borrowed pieces into something that looks like personal genius. This law is not about laziness, it is about efficiency of power. Time is finite, energy is limited, but influence multiplies. When you rely solely on your own effort, your power grows linearly. When you harness the efforts of others, it grows exponentially. History celebrates leaders, not laborers. The general is remembered, not the soldiers. The architect's name survives, not the builders. This is not fairness, it is how human memory works.
but people remember the face at the top. Those who ignore this law burn out quietly. They become indispensable workers and invisible leaders. They are praised for reliability, but overlooked for advancement. Their reward for competence is more work without authority. Those who follow this law build systems. They delegate aggressively. They assign ownership selectively. They collect results and present them as vision. And here's the uncomfortable part. Credit must be claimed, not waited for. If you don't define your role, someone else will. If you don't frame the success, others will rewrite it. This law also warns against being too generous with acknowledgement in public. Praise can be given, but carefully. Excessive credit sharing dilutes authority. Power requires a clear center, and that center must appear to be you. Behind the scenes, you reward contributors. You keep them motivated. You ensure they benefit enough to continue producing. But outwardly, the narrative remains focused. You are the conductor. They are the orchestra. Another hidden advantage of this law is protection. When others do the work, they absorb the risk. Mistakes can be distanced. Failures can be delegated downward. Success, however, travels upward effortlessly. This asymmetry is not accidental, it is structural. Of course, this law has a danger. If people feel exploited, loyalty collapses. The solution is subtle balance. Give just enough recognition to keep cooperation alive, but never enough to threaten your position. Power is not about being liked, it is about being needed. In the end, Law 7 teaches that true dominance is not visible sweat, it is invisible coordination. The most powerful figures appear calm, unhurried, and brilliant precisely because others are working furiously beneath them. Because in the hierarchy of power, effort is replaceable, but control of outcomes is not.
Law 8. Make other people come to you. Use bait if necessary. Power shifts the moment you stop chasing. Most people reveal weakness by moving first, by explaining, pursuing, negotiating, pleading. Every step towards someone else quietly hands them leverage. Law 8 flips that equation. It teaches that control belongs to the one who sets the field and waits. When you make others come to you, you dictate the terms. You choose the timing. You control the environment. You decide what is offered and what is withheld. The moment someone enters your space, physical, emotional, or strategic, they are already reacting instead of leading. Chasing creates imbalance. Waiting creates gravity. This law is not about stubbornness, it's about positioning. When you rush forward, you expose urgency, and urgency signals need. People feel it instantly. They slow down, they bargain harder, they withhold more, they test your limits. But when you remain still, when you don't rush to answer, don't jump at every opportunity, don't explain yourself, something subtle happens. The pressure reverses. Curiosity builds. Doubt creeps in. The other side begins to wonder what they're missing. That uncertainty pulls them toward you. This is where bait comes in. Bait is not deception, it's incentive. You offer something attractive but incomplete, a glimpse, not the whole picture. Enough value to spark interest, not enough to satisfy it. Information, access, opportunity, approval, scarcity. You let others believe they are choosing, when in reality they are being guided.
History favors those who forced opponents to overextend, those who waited behind walls while others marched across open ground, those who turned patience into a weapon. When people move toward you, they spend energy, they reveal intentions, they commit resources. You stay protected while they expose themselves. The environment matters too. Meet on your terms, negotiate on your ground, let others step into your rhythm. Home field advantage is psychological. People feel less confident outside their comfort zone. They hesitate, they adapt, they react, and reaction is always weaker than intention. This law also applies emotionally. When you constantly pursue approval, attention, or validation, you lose value. But when you pull back, when you create space, others feel the absence. Desire grows in the gap. What is too available is taken for granted. What must be approached feels important. Distance creates power. But there is a warning embedded here. Waiting without preparation is passivity. Bait without clarity is confusion. You must know what you're drawing people toward and why. The goal is not isolation. The goal is controlled attraction. You don't hide forever. You don't retreat permanently. You position yourself so that movement favors you. In the end, Law 8 teaches that power belongs to the still point, the place others move toward. The hunter who waits chooses the moment. The trap that stays quiet catches more than the one that rattles. Because in the game of power, the one who moves first often moves into disadvantage.
Law 9. Win through your actions, never through argument. Arguments feel powerful until they fail. Words promise clarity, logic, and truth, but Law 9 cuts through that illusion with a cold lesson. No one ever truly wins an argument. At best, you win words. At worst, you win enemies. When you argue, you challenge identity. You don't just disagree with ideas. You threaten pride, intelligence, and status. And when those are threatened, reason shuts down. People may nod, they may concede out loud, but internally they resist, they remember, and they wait. Victory through argument is temporary. Resentment lasts much longer. This law teaches that power prefers demonstration over debate. Actions are harder to deny. Results are harder to argue with. When people see outcomes, they adapt. When they are merely told, they defend. Think about how humans actually change. Rarely through persuasion, almost always through experience. You can explain your competence all day, or you can quietly succeed once and never explain again. This is why powerful individuals avoid public disputes. They don't correct people loudly. They don't prove points aggressively. They let time, results, and consequences do the work. Silence backed by action feels confident. Speech backed by insecurity feels weak. Arguments also reveal too much. When you debate, you expose your thinking. You show what matters to you. You reveal where you're emotionally invested, and that information can be used against you later. Every passionate defense is a map to your pressure points. Action reveals nothing, but delivers everything. There is also a social trap here.
When you argue and win, the other person loses face, and people who lose face don't forget. They look for revenge, sabotage, or subtle resistance. You may be right, but now you are alone. Power is not about being correct. It is about being effective. Those who master this law let others believe they were right until reality proves otherwise. They don't rush correction. They allow mistakes to unfold naturally. They let outcomes teach lessons more convincingly than lectures ever could. And when the moment to speak, they do it sparingly, calmly, without emotion. Their words carry weight because they are supported by evidence, not ego. This law does not say never speak. It says never rely on speech alone. Use words to frame results, not to fight resistance. Use silence to let success speak first. In the end, Law 9 reminds us that arguments create opposition, while actions create authority. People may dispute your words, but they must live with your results. Because in the hierarchy of power, proof beats persuasion, and reality always wins the final debate.
Law 10. Infection. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky. Misery is not just emotional, it is contagious. Law 10 delivers a warning most people ignore until it's too late. Some individuals don't merely experience bad luck, they spread it. Their presence drains energy, distorts judgment, and quietly pulls everything around them downward. The unhappy and the unlucky operate on a pattern. Problems follow them, conflicts repeat, opportunities collapse, and no matter how many chances they receive, the outcome remains the same. This is not coincidence, it's gravity. Spend enough time near that gravity, and it starts pulling you too. This law is not about cruelty or lack of compassion. It is about self-preservation. When you tie your fate to people who constantly fail, complain, or implode, you inherit their consequences. You get associated with their chaos. You get pulled into their emergencies. You become a supporting character in their endless crisis. And crises consume power. Unhappy people see the world through blame. Unlucky people expect disaster. Together, they infect conversations with doubt, decisions with fear, and momentum with hesitation. They normalize failure. They justify stagnation. They turn every solution into a problem. Worst of all, they rarely change because their identity is built around being wronged. Power thrives on momentum. Momentum dies in toxic environments. This is why successful individuals are ruthless about proximity. They observe patterns, not promises. They notice who improves situations and who complicates them. They don't argue, they don't explain, they distance. Because rescuing someone who refuses to rise only guarantees one thing: you will sink together. This law also warns against romanticizing loyalty. Staying out of guilt, history, or obligation is expensive. The longer you remain connected, the harder it becomes to leave. And by the time you realize the cost, your reputation, time, and emotional clarity may already be damaged. Cutting ties early is cleaner than escaping later. There is a hidden upside to this law. Environments matter more than intention. Surround yourself with energy, discipline, and optimism, and those traits compound. Stay near bitterness and chaos, and you absorb them without noticing.
You don't need to hate the unhappy. You don't need to punish the unlucky. You just need to not attach your future to them. Powerful people choose distance quietly. No speeches, no drama, just absence. In the end, Law 10 teaches a brutal truth. You cannot save everyone, and trying to do so often costs you your own ascent. Because in the world of power, misfortune spreads faster than success, and survival begins with choosing who stands beside you.
Law 11. Learn to keep people dependent on you. True power is not loud, it is necessary. Law 11 reveals a principle that governs all lasting authority. The more people need you, the harder it is for them to remove you. Independence feels virtuous, but in the world of power, being needed is safer than being admired. When people can replace you easily, they will. When they cannot function without you, they protect you. Most people make the mistake of trying to be liked. They offer help freely. They solve problems completely. They teach others everything they know, and slowly they make themselves irrelevant. Competence without dependency is disposable. Those who understand power do the opposite. They provide value, but not total access. They solve problems, but leave a gap only they can fill. They become the bridge, not just a traveler. Dependency is built through scarcity. Unique knowledge, exclusive access, critical relationships, control over timing or information. When you control something essential, something others rely on, you gain leverage without force. People consult you before acting. They hesitate to offend you. They protect your position because losing you would cost them stability. This law also warns against empowering others too fully. Teaching someone everything you know feels generous, but it creates a future rival. Once they no longer need you, loyalty disappears, gratitude fades, power shifts. This doesn't mean hoarding knowledge selfishly. It means layering access. You give enough to function, but not enough to replace you. Power is about being the missing piece. There is also a psychological element here. People justify dependency by elevating the source. The more they rely on you, the more they convince themselves you are valuable, competent, and indispensable. Dependency reinforces reputation. But dependency must be managed carefully. Too much control feels suffocating. People rebel when they feel trapped. The goal is not domination, it is interdependence that favors you. You remain essential, not oppressive. In leadership, this means structuring systems so that decisions flow through you. In relationships, it means being the emotional constant. In business, it means owning the process, not just the task. Replaceable workers get thanked. Indispensable figures get protected. In the end, Law 11 teaches that power is not seized, it is secured, and it is secured by making yourself the point of stability in other people's lives. Because when people depend on you, they think twice before crossing you, and 3 times before letting you go. Law 12. Use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. Honesty feels disarming because it is rare. Generosity feels trustworthy because it costs something.
And that is exactly why they work. Law 12 exposes a subtle psychological weapon. A single, well-timed act of honesty or generosity can lower defenses more effectively than 1,000 clever lies. When people expect manipulation and receive openness instead, they relax, they stop guarding, they stop suspecting, and once suspicion fades, control becomes effortless. Most people think deception requires constant lying. In reality, the strongest manipulators tell the truth selectively. A surprise confession creates credibility. An unexpected gift creates obligation. A moment of transparency creates trust. And trust is leverage. When you reveal a flaw voluntarily, people assume you have nothing else to hide. When you admit a small mistake, they stop looking for bigger ones. When you give something without being asked, they feel indebted, even if they don't consciously acknowledge it. This is not kindness for kindness' sake. This is strategy. Selective honesty works because it contrasts with expectation. People are trained to look for angles. When you give them clarity instead, they lower their guard. They feel safe. And safety makes people careless. Generosity works the same way. A gift changes the emotional balance. It creates a silent contract. Even people who believe they are immune to influence feel the pressure to reciprocate. They listen more closely. They resist less. They justify compromises internally. The key word here is selective. If you are honest all the time, honesty loses power. If you are generous constantly, generosity becomes entitlement. The strength of this law lies in restraint. You choose moments that matter. You give just enough truth to appear genuine. You offer just enough generosity to create imbalance. Then you step back and let psychology do the rest. This law also warns against clumsy overuse. If honesty feels theatrical, suspicion returns. If generosity feels excessive, motives are questioned. The act must feel natural, almost accidental. The most effective disarming moves look effortless. There is also a deeper layer to this law. People judge intent more than outcome. When they believe you are sincere, they forgive errors, they excuse delays, they reinterpret your actions in your favor. Perception bends reality. Once people believe in your good faith, you can guide them with minimal resistance. In the end, Law 12 teaches that the sharpest blade is often wrapped in kindness. Power does not always need force, pressure, or deception. Sometimes it only needs a well-placed truth or a gift given at the perfect moment. Because when defenses drop, influence enters quietly and stays.
Law 13. When asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest, never to their mercy or gratitude. When you ask for help, you reveal something important, what you value, what you lack, and how you see the other person. Law 13 warns that most people ask the wrong way. They appeal to kindness. They remind others of favors done in the past. They hope gratitude will be enough, and when it isn't, they feel betrayed. But power is not fueled by memory. It is fueled by interest. People help when it benefits them, clearly, directly, and immediately. Mercy is emotional and unstable. Gratitude fades with time. Self-interest, however, is consistent, predictable, reliable.
This law teaches effective requests are framed as opportunities, not burdens. Instead of saying, "You owe me," you say, "Here's what you gain." Instead of saying, "Please help me," you say, "This helps us both." When people see themselves winning, resistance disappears. They don't feel pressured, they feel smart, they feel in control. And because the decision feels like their own, commitment increases. Appealing to mercy puts the other person above you. Appealing to gratitude reminds them of a past they may want to forget. Appealing to self-interest puts you on equal footing. This law also teaches timing. People are most helpful when the benefit is obvious and close. Vague future rewards feel like manipulation. Clear, concrete gains feel like good judgment. You don't need to exaggerate, you need to translate. Show how your request aligns with their goals, their image, their fears, or their ambitions. Even moral people respond to advantage. Even generous people prefer outcomes that favor them. There is no insult in this. It is how humans operate. Powerful people never beg. They negotiate, even when asking. They make the other side feel clever for agreeing. They let the helper take credit for the decision, and by doing so, they turn assistance into alliance. In the end, Law 13 teaches a clean truth. People support what serves them. Respect that reality, and doors open. Ignore it, and even past loyalty won't save you. Because in the economy of power, self-interest is the strongest currency, and the easiest one to spend wisely.
Law 14. Pose as a friend, work as a spy. Information is the real currency of power. Who knows what about whom decides who moves first and who reacts too late. Law 14 reveals a quiet advantage. People reveal the most when they feel safe. Not when they are pressured, not when they are interrogated, but when they believe they are among friends. Most people guard themselves against enemies. They prepare defenses. They choose words carefully. They stay alert. But around a friend, the guard drops. The voice softens. Details slip out. Opinions become honest. Weakness shows itself naturally. This is where power listens. To pose as a friend is not to fake kindness, it is to earn access. You show interest, you ask harmless questions, you listen more than you speak. You allow others to talk about themselves, their frustrations, their plans, and as they talk, they hand you the blueprint to their decisions. People love to feel understood. They love to feel heard. They love to feel important. When you provide that space, they open doors without realizing it. This law does not require deception in every word. It requires restraint. You don't reveal your full position. You don't share your intentions. You don't rush to offer opinions that might shut conversation down. You let the other person lead, because leadership in conversation is exposure. Information gathered this way is cleaner than rumors and stronger than guesses. You learn who influences whom, what pressures exist behind the scenes, where insecurities hide, where leverage lives. And leverage doesn't need to be used immediately. Often simply having it is enough. This law also protects you. When you understand people deeply, surprises disappear, betrayals are anticipated, shifts in loyalty are seen early. You move with foresight while others move on assumption. But there is a discipline here.
If you gather information and use it crudely, trust collapses. The goal is not to exploit constantly, it is to know consistently. Knowledge gives options, silence preserves access. The most powerful listeners rarely reveal how much they know. In negotiations, this law gives you the upper hand before talks even begin. In leadership, it allows you to manage personalities instead of reacting to them. In conflict, it helps you strike where resistance is weakest or avoid the fight entirely, because knowing is often better than winning. In the end, Law 14 teaches that power prefers ears over mouths. Those who talk reveal themselves. Those who listen collect advantage. Smile, listen, remember. Because in the game of power, the quiet observer often controls the loudest room.
Law 15. Crush your enemy totally. Half measures create the most dangerous enemies. Law 15 delivers one of the harshest lessons in the entire book, and also one of the most misunderstood. When you decide to confront an enemy, you must eliminate their ability to retaliate completely. Not violently, not emotionally, but structurally. Mercy feels noble. Restraint feels moral, but in power struggles, mercy often plants the seeds of revenge. An enemy who survives humiliation, loss, or defeat does not forget. They retreat, they observe, they adapt. Time becomes their ally. Pride becomes their fuel, and when the moment arrives, when you least expect it, they strike back harder, smarter, and with nothing left to lose. History is brutally consistent on this point. Enemies who are weakened but spared return as threats. Enemies who are crushed disappear from the equation. This law does not advocate cruelty for its own sake. It warns against incomplete dominance. If you choose to engage, you must finish the conflict in a way that removes future resistance. Anything less invites long-term instability. Most people fail here because they confuse kindness with safety. They defeat an opponent publicly, but allow them to keep influence privately. They expose someone's weakness, but leave them resources. They win the battle, but leave the enemy's pride intact. That pride becomes poison. Power is not about defeating someone today. It is about preventing them from becoming a problem tomorrow. This law also applies beyond literal enemies, rivals, competitors, saboteurs, people who quietly undermine you. When you finally act, you must remove their platform, their credibility, or their access. Otherwise, the conflict resets. The danger of partial victories is psychological. When someone feels wronged but not finished, they obsess, they replay the loss, they justify revenge, and unlike before, now they have clarity, motivation, and patience. A crushed enemy has none of that. They may feel anger, but they lack tools. They may feel resentment, but they lack position. They may hate you, but they cannot reach you. That is safety. This law also warns against unnecessary enemies, because crushing someone is costly. It requires certainty, precision, commitment. If you are not prepared to go all the way, it is better not to engage at all. Avoid conflict until avoidance becomes impossible. But once it becomes unavoidable, hesitation is fatal. Decisive action shortens conflict. Total resolution prevents return. There is also a symbolic aspect here.
When others see that resistance leads to complete defeat, future challengers hesitate. Your reputation becomes a deterrent. You no longer need to fight every battle. Your past actions fight for you. Power consolidates through example. This law does not mean destroying people emotionally or physically. It means dismantling their capacity to oppose you. Remove leverage, remove allies, remove narrative control, remove relevance. Silence can be a form of crushing. Exclusion can be a form of erasure. Success can be the final humiliation. In the end, Law 15, crush your enemy totally, teaches a cold but stabilizing truth. Unresolved conflict is more dangerous than decisive resolution, because enemies forgiven remember, enemies spared recover, enemies crushed are finished. And in the game of power, the past you leave unfinished always comes back to collect interest.
Law 16. Use absence to increase respect and honor. Familiarity breeds comfort, and comfort quietly kills respect. Law 16 reveals a paradox of power. The more available you are, the less valuable you appear. Presence, when constant, becomes background noise. Absence, when deliberate, creates gravity. People don't measure worth by effort alone. They measure it by scarcity. What is always present is assumed to be replaceable. What disappears becomes important. This law is not about vanishing randomly. It is about strategic withdrawal. You step back not out of weakness, but out of control. You create space so others can feel your absence, and in that gap, your value grows. Think about how respect actually forms. It doesn't come from constant reminders. It comes from moments, from contrast, from the feeling of loss when something essential is no longer there. When you're always available, people delay responses. They take you for granted. They push boundaries. They assume you'll always be there tomorrow. But when you pull back, when access becomes limited, attention sharpens, behavior adjusts, appreciation returns. Distance clarifies value. This law works because humans are wired to desire what they can't immediately reach. Scarcity activates curiosity. Uncertainty amplifies importance. The mind fills the silence with meaning, and usually that meaning favors you. Powerful figures throughout history understood this instinctively. They appeared selectively. They spoke rarely. They made entrances and exits count. Each return felt significant because it was not guaranteed. Presence becomes powerful only after absence. This principle applies everywhere. In leadership, overexposure weakens authority. In relationships, constant availability dulls desire. In business, being too accessible lowers leverage. The mistake most people make is confusing activity with importance. They stay busy, they stay visible, they stay reachable, and slowly their presence loses impact. This law teaches restraint. You don't disappear forever. You don't withdraw emotionally. You time your absence so it reshapes perception. Absence also protects you. When you're not constantly present, you avoid being blamed for every problem. You avoid being dragged into unnecessary conflict. You avoid becoming the default solution for issues others should handle. You return stronger because expectations reset.
But there is a danger here. Absence without reputation is abandonment. Absence without value is invisibility. This law only works when your presence is already meaningful. You must first establish usefulness, competence, or influence. Only then does absence increase respect instead of erasing you. When done correctly, people adjust around you. They prepare more. They speak more carefully. They value your time because they know it is not unlimited. In the end, Law 16 teaches that power is not maintained by constant assertion, but by controlled withdrawal. Step back, let silence work, return with intention. Because what people miss, they respect, and what they respect, they protect.
Law 17. Keep others in suspense. Cultivate an air of unpredictability. Predictability is comforting, and comfort is the enemy of power. Law 17 teaches that the moment people can anticipate your behavior, they begin to control you. They plan around you. They exploit patterns. They relax because nothing about you surprises them anymore. Unpredictability breaks that comfort. When your actions cannot be easily forecasted, people hesitate, they pause, they second-guess, and in that hesitation, power shifts in your direction. Human beings crave patterns. We look for routines, habits, signals. Once we believe we understand someone, we stop paying close attention. We assume, and assumption breeds vulnerability. This law turns that instinct against them. When you vary your responses, your timing, and your behavior without explanation, you create uncertainty, and uncertainty forces vigilance. People watch you more closely. They tread carefully. They invest mental energy just to keep up. Unpredictability becomes pressure. This does not mean chaos. Randomness without intent looks weak. The goal is controlled irregularity. You break patterns just enough to prevent others from settling into certainty, but not so much that you appear unstable or unreliable. You act consistently in values, but inconsistently in execution. Sometimes you respond immediately. Sometimes you wait. Sometimes you concede. Sometimes you resist. No pattern, no script, no comfort. This law also protects you from manipulation. When others don't know how you'll react, they can't easily provoke you. They can't bait you into predictable emotional responses. They can't time their moves against yours. You become a moving target. Historically, leaders who cultivated mystery lasted longer. They kept intentions unclear. They avoided rigid routines. They surprised allies and enemies alike, not with cruelty, but with flexibility. Their power came from never being fully readable. Unpredictability also magnifies presence. When people don't know when you'll speak, your silence becomes louder. When they don't know when you'll act, your stillness becomes threatening. Every move gains weight because it's not expected. But there is a warning here. Too much unpredictability erodes trust. If people can't rely on anything, they disengage. The key is balance. Be dependable in outcomes, unpredictable in methods. Let people trust that you'll act, just not how. This keeps respect intact while preserving advantage.
In negotiations, this law unsettles opponents. In leadership, it prevents complacency. In conflict, it keeps enemies off balance. And in daily power dynamics, it ensures you are never taken lightly. In the end, Law 17 teaches that control doesn't always come from strength, it often comes from mystery. When people can't predict you, they can't dominate you. When they can't relax around you, they respect you. Because in the game of power, certainty is a luxury, and suspense is a weapon.
Law 18. Do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous. When pressure rises, the instinct is to retreat, to pull away, to protect yourself by building walls. But Law 18 warns that what feels like safety often becomes a trap. Isolation does not protect power, it weakens it. When you cut yourself off, you lose information, you lose perspective, you lose early warnings, and most dangerously, you lose allies. Power survives on awareness, and awareness only exists where people are. Fortresses create silence, silence creates blind spots. Those who isolate believe distance keeps them safe from attack. In reality, it makes them easier to surround. When you are alone, you rely only on your own view. You miss subtle shifts. You misread intentions. You underestimate enemies and overestimate your own position. History repeatedly shows that rulers who withdrew from their people, advisors, and networks fell fastest, not because they were weak, but because they were uninformed. Connection is intelligence. This law does not say expose yourself recklessly. It says stay connected, move among people, maintain relationships, circulate, listen. Power grows through proximity, not seclusion. When you remain visible and engaged, you hear rumors early. You sense tension before it explodes. You feel shifts before they harden into opposition. Information flows toward those who are accessible. Isolation starves you of that flow. There is also a psychological danger here. Alone, fear magnifies, assumptions harden, paranoia grows. Without feedback, small threats feel enormous, and imagined dangers become real in your mind. Decisions made in isolation tend to be extreme, and extremes invite resistance. Connection keeps judgment grounded. This law also applies emotionally. When you pull away too much, others stop investing in you. Loyalty fades quietly, support thins out, and when you finally need help, there is no one left who feels involved enough to respond. Power is relational. It exists between people, not inside walls. But there is a balance. Being everywhere makes you common. Being nowhere makes you irrelevant. The goal is not isolation or exposure. It is circulation with control. You appear selectively. You stay informed without oversharing. You maintain presence without becoming predictable. Powerful figures move through many circles but belong fully to none. They are seen, heard, and connected, yet never trapped in one place or identity. In the end, Law 18 teaches that safety does not come from hiding. It comes from awareness, alliances, and adaptability. Walls feel strong, but networks survive. Because in the game of power, the isolated fall silently, while the connected See danger coming long before it arrives.
Law 19. Know who you're dealing with. Do not offend the wrong person. Not all enemies are equal, and not all people forgive the same way. Law 19 warns that the most dangerous mistakes in power are often social, not strategic. You can survive bad timing, you can recover from weak positioning, but offending the wrong person once is sometimes irreversible. People differ in pride, memory, and appetite for revenge. Some lash out loudly and burn fast. Others go quiet and wait. The second type is far more dangerous. Power requires diagnosis. Before you criticize, before you confront, before you joke, before you challenge, pause and identify who you're dealing with. Are they emotional or calculating, powerful or well-connected, forgiving or vindictive? Do they forget easily or keep mental ledgers forever? The same action lands differently on different personalities. What one person shrugs off, another records. What one person debates, another retaliates. What one person forgives, another never does. This law teaches restraint born of awareness. You don't need to fear everyone, but you must respect differences in temperament. Some people cannot handle public embarrassment. Others cannot tolerate being contradicted. Some smile while planning revenge. Others explode and move on. Your job is not to judge. It is to avoid unnecessary battles. Powerful operators choose their conflicts carefully. They know when to push, when to flatter, when to stay silent, and when to disengage entirely. They do not assume everyone plays by the same emotional rules. And here is the hidden danger. The most vengeful people are often the quietest. They don't argue, they don't threaten, they don't escalate immediately. They wait. They gather allies, they look for moments of weakness, they strike indirectly, through reputation, access, or opportunity. By the time you realize what's happening, the damage is already done. This is why empathy becomes armor. Understanding how others feel is not softness, it is protection. When you sense fragile pride or deep insecurity, you tread lightly. When you sense rigid honor codes, you avoid public challenges. When you sense long memories, you keep interactions clean and minimal. Sometimes the smartest move is distance. Avoiding someone is not defeat. Silence is not surrender. Disengagement is often dominance. This law also applies upward. Offending someone with more power, more patience, or more reach than you is reckless. Pride does not equal courage, and being right is a poor shield against retaliation. Power favors survival over ego. In the end, Law 19 teaches that strength without social awareness is fragile. You don't need to win every exchange. You need to avoid losing the wrong one. Because in the game of power, a single misjudged insult can cost more than 1,000 quiet compromises. Law 20. Do not commit to anyone. Commitment feels honorable, loyalty feels strong, but in the arena of power, fixed allegiance is a liability. Law 20 does not preach betrayal. It warns against binding yourself too tightly to any single person, faction, or cause. The moment you commit fully, you surrender flexibility, and flexibility is the bloodline of power. When others know exactly where you stand, they plan around you, they exploit your predictability, they pressure you with expectations, your freedom of movement collapses into obligation. Power thrives in optionality. Those who refuse to commit remain unpredictable. They are courted instead of commanded. They are negotiated with instead of ordered. When everyone wants your support and no one can assume it, you become valuable. This law works because people overestimate loyalty and underestimate leverage. They believe allegiance guarantees protection. In reality, it creates dependency. Once you are known as theirs, your value drops. You are no longer a prize, you are property. Neutrality creates demand. By not committing, you force others to compete for you. You listen to all sides. You collect information. You observe shifts in momentum. And when the balance of power changes, as it always does, you are free to move with it. This is not cowardice. This is strategic patience. History favors the flexible. Empires fell because leaders tied themselves to losing factions. Careers ended because people defended the wrong ally too loudly. Power punishes those who choose sides too early. But there is a discipline required here. Refusing to commit does not mean appearing weak or indecisive. You must project independence, not avoidance. Calm detachment, not fear. You make it clear that your support has value and therefore must be earned. You offer temporary alignment, not permanent allegiance. This law also protects you from being dragged into conflicts that are not yours. When factions fight, committed supporters absorb the damage. The uncommitted watch, learn, and step in only when the outcome is clear or when the price is right. Distance preserves leverage. There is also a psychological edge. People respect those who cannot be owned. They treat them carefully. They speak more honestly. They reveal more, hoping to persuade rather than assume. And persuasion puts you in control. Of course, total detachment has risks. If people see you as unreliable, trust erodes. The solution is selective reliability. Keep your word on actions, not on allegiance. Deliver results without surrendering independence. Be dependable, but not owned. In the end, Law 20 teaches that power belongs to those who keep their hands free. The less you are tied down, the more options you have when circumstances change. Because in the game of power, those who commit too deeply often fall with the side they chose, while the uncommitted remain standing when the dust settles.
Law 21. Play a sucker to catch a sucker. Seem dumber than your mark. Power does not always wear a crown. Sometimes it wears a smile that looks harmless. Law 21 is one of the darkest laws because it attacks the most dangerous human weakness of all, ego. People do not fall because they are stupid. They fall because they believe they are smarter than everyone else. And this law teaches you how to use that belief against them. When you appear intelligent, people become cautious. They guard their words. They protect their position. They suspect hidden motives. But when you appear naive, slow, harmless, even foolish, something changes. They relax. They underestimate. And once they underestimate you, they expose themselves. Ego is louder than reason. When people believe they are superior, they talk more, they explain more, they brag, they reveal secrets they would never share with an equal. They show you how they think, how they move, and where their weaknesses are. Arrogance makes people sloppy. This is why pretending to be less than you are is often safer and deadlier than proving your intelligence. The moment you show brilliance, people compete with you. The moment you hide it, they play themselves. The smartest predators in history rarely looked threatening. They blended in, they listened, they let others believe they were in control. And while the arrogant strutted, the quiet observer mapped the room. This law thrives in darkness because it inverts expectations. You let others feel powerful. You let them feel clever. You let them feel dominant. And while they are enjoying their superiority, you collect leverage. People love teaching someone they believe is inferior. They correct you. They explain their strategies. They reveal how things really work. And they never realize that every word is being stored, analyzed, and weaponized. The more you appear impressed, the more they reveal. This law also protects you. When things go wrong, the fool is rarely blamed. Mistakes are forgiven. Suspicion is minimal. You move unnoticed while others attract attention and enemies. Visibility is danger. Invisibility is freedom. But this law requires discipline, real discipline. You must swallow your pride. You must resist the urge to correct. You must endure being underestimated. And that is difficult, because ego wants recognition, but power wants results. Those who cannot control their ego expose their intelligence too early. They win arguments and lose wars. They impress rooms and make enemies. They shine and become targets. Those who master this law let others shine first. There is a thrill here, the thrill of watching someone walk confidently into their own trap. They believe they are manipulating you. They believe they are leading. They believe they are winning. And because they believe that, they never see the knife coming. But make no mistake, this law is not about acting stupid. It is about acting unreadable. You must still observe sharply, think clearly, plan deeply. The mask is for others. The mind remains sharp. Remove the mask too early, and the illusion breaks. Keep it too long, and people dismiss you permanently. Timing is everything. The final strike of this law is revelation. When the moment comes, when leverage is complete, you act decisively, quietly, efficiently. No explanation, no argument, just outcome. In the end, Law 21 teaches a terrifying truth. The greatest advantage is not intelligence. It is letting others believe they possess it. Because when ego leads, judgment sleeps. And when judgment sleeps, power moves freely in the dark.
Law 22. Use the surrender tactic. Transform weakness into power. There are moments when strength is suicide, when resistance draws attention, when pride invites destruction, when standing tall makes you the easiest target in the room. Law 22 enters the story at that moment, when the lights go dim and survival demands something colder than courage, submission with intent.
Surrender is misunderstood because it looks like defeat. It feels humiliating. It bruises the ego, and that is why it works. People mistake compliance for collapse. They relax. They celebrate too early. They stop guarding their flanks. And that is when power changes hands. This law is not about giving up. It is about buying time. When you are weaker, surrounded, outmatched, or cornered, direct opposition only accelerates your fall. The powerful expect resistance. They prepare for it. They justify crushing it. But when you yield, openly, calmly, without drama, you short-circuit their expectations. Aggression loses its target. The victor wants dominance, not emptiness. When you surrender, you deny them the satisfaction of a fight. You turn their momentum into confusion, and confusion is a crack in the armor. Surrender shifts the battlefield from strength to psychology. By yielding, you disarm hostility. You make yourself appear harmless. You invite oversight instead of annihilation. You move from threat to problem that can be managed. And management creates proximity. Proximity creates opportunity. History's most patient survivors understood this. When crushed openly, they bowed. When humiliated publicly, they endured. They absorbed insults like poison, slowly, deliberately, because every insult kept them alive long enough to adapt. They learned the terrain. They mapped the egos. They watched who grew careless. Surrender is camouflage. While your opponent celebrates dominance, you gather leverage quietly. You learn their routines, their blind spots, their alliances. Their arrogance grows because they believe you are finished. That belief is your shelter. This law also transforms weakness into narrative control. When you admit defeat before it is demanded, you appear honest, reasonable, non-threatening. You control the story of your loss, and stories decide future treatment. People treat those who resist as enemies. They treat those who submit as resources. Resources are kept alive. But this law demands brutal discipline. You must swallow rage. You must silence pride. You must endure being underestimated. The ego screams to fight back, but ego is loud, and loud things die first. Power whispers. There is a darker layer here. Surrender exhausts the victor. Dominance requires energy. Vigilance fades when resistance disappears. Rules loosen. Guards drop. And when they drop, the balance begins to tilt. The trap is patience. Surrender too completely, and you disappear. Reveal your recovery too early, and you are crushed again. The art is measured submission, enough to survive, not enough to be erased. You bend so you don't break. You kneel so you can stand later. And when the moment finally arrives, when leverage is real, when alliances shift, when circumstances reverse, you rise without warning. No speeches, no explanations, just action. In the end, Law 22 teaches a truth colder than pride. Power is not proven by resistance alone, but by survival with memory. Because those who fight and lose are destroyed. Those who surrender and learn often return as something far more dangerous.
Law 23. Concentrate your forces. Scattered power feels busy. Focused power feels inevitable. Law 23 is about restraint so sharp it becomes lethal. It teaches that spreading yourself thin, your time, your attention, your energy, creates the illusion of strength while guaranteeing weakness. Many small efforts impress no one. One concentrated strike ends the game. Dark power doesn't rush everywhere. It chooses one point and crushes it. Most people fear focus because focus demands sacrifice. To concentrate your forces, you must abandon distractions, decline opportunities, and disappoint expectations. You must accept that winning one battle decisively is better than skirmishing everywhere and bleeding slowly. Power hates diffusion. When your resources are scattered, opponents probe until they find the weakest spot. When your resources are concentrated, resistance breaks, pressure compounds, momentum builds, victory becomes self-feeding. This law applies to time first. Hours fragmented into endless tasks feel productive, but they produce nothing lasting. One uninterrupted block aimed at a single objective does more damage than weeks of divided effort. Focus turns effort into force. Then it applies to people. A small, loyal core beats a large, unfocused crowd. Fewer voices sharpen direction. Fewer hands tighten control. Power prefers tight circles because tight circles move together and move fast. And finally, it applies to attack. Never strike everywhere. Strike where it hurts most. Identify the center of gravity, the source of income, influence, confidence, or control. Ignore the noise. Ignore the distractions. Hit the core until it collapses, and the rest follows. This is why empires fall from one fracture, not many. Opponents often try to lure you into spreading yourself thin. They create multiple problems, multiple urgencies, multiple fires. The goal is not to defeat you directly, but to exhaust you into weakness. Do not take the bait. Choose one front, overwhelm it, finish it. There is a psychological terror in concentrated force. When pressure never relents, when it keeps coming from the same direction, people crack. They cannot recover. They cannot regroup. They begin making mistakes just to breathe. Relentlessness wins where brilliance fails. But concentration requires discipline. You must resist novelty. You must ignore side quests. You must say no to attractive distractions that dilute your main attack. Power is often lost not to enemies, but to opportunities taken too early. Dark power waits. This law also protects you defensively. When your resources are focused, you are harder to destabilize. You are not juggling fragile commitments. You are not reacting everywhere. You are anchored, and anchors are hard to move. In the end, Law 23 teaches a ruthless clarity. Strength multiplied is strength diluted. Strength focused is strength amplified. One blade sharpened cuts deeper than 10 dull knives, because in the shadows of power, those who concentrate their forces do not merely advance, they break through.
Law 24. Play the perfect courtier. Power rarely lives in chaos. It lives in rooms with rules, rooms where smiles are weapons, silence is language, and survival depends on how well you perform. Law 24 is about mastering those rooms. The court is not just a palace, it is any environment where hierarchy exists. Offices, politics, corporations, creative industries, inner circles. Wherever egos gather and decisions are made quietly, the court is already formed. And the untrained do not survive there for long. The perfect courtier understands one brutal truth. Raw talent is never enough. Intelligence alone gets you noticed. Skill alone gets you used. But grace, self-control, and emotional camouflage keep you alive. Courts punish the obvious. Those who complain openly are marked. Those who show frustration are isolated. Those who act superior invite correction. The courtier never challenges power head-on. They orbit it. They flatter without sounding fake. They agree without surrendering identity. They advise without threatening authority. Every word is weighed. Every reaction is calculated. Nothing is wasted. The dark beauty of this law is restraint. The courtier absorbs insult without flinching. They endure injustice without protest. They wait while others self-destruct emotionally. And while chaos consumes the loud, the courtier remains untouched, watching, remembering, advancing quietly. This is not weakness. This is armor. Courts are fueled by envy. People compare constantly. They measure favor, attention, access, and the fastest way to be destroyed is to appear too hungry for any of it. The courtier wants nothing openly, and therefore attracts everything subtly. They never outshine the master. They never embarrass rivals publicly. They never reveal ambition too clearly. Instead, they let others stumble. They let egos collide. They let time do the damage. And when opportunity opens, a vacancy, a fall, a scandal, the courtier steps forward already trusted, already familiar, already safe. This law thrives in darkness because courts are hostile to honesty. Saying exactly what you think is dangerous. Being authentic is expensive. The courtier wears masks, not to deceive maliciously, but to survive reality. One mask for superiors, one for equals, one for subordinates. Never the same face, never the same tone. Those who refuse to adapt call this manipulation. Those who understand power call it longevity. But there is danger here. Lose yourself completely and you become hollow. Perform too well and you disappear into service. The perfect courtier remembers their inner core. They bend but do not break. They adapt but do not dissolve. Their loyalty is professional, not personal. Their obedience is tactical, not emotional. When the court collapses, as all courts eventually do, the courtier walks away intact, while others are buried in the ruins. In the end, Law 24, Play the Perfect Courtier, teaches a cold survival truth. Power does not always reward honesty, it rewards control. Because in the theater of power, those who master the performance outlive those who demand the spotlight.
Law 25. Recreate yourself. Identity is the first prison you're handed. Most people never notice the bars. Law 25 cuts deep because it attacks the illusion of permanence, the lie that who you are today must define who you are tomorrow.
In the world of power, fixed identity is weakness. It makes you readable, predictable, containable. Those who cannot change are controlled by those who can. Recreating yourself is not about self-help. It is about escape. You are born into roles you did not choose, names, labels, expectations, social gravity. Over time, those forces harden into a mask you forget you're wearing. And once others believe they know you, they stop questioning you and start using you. Power begins the moment you decide this version of me is no longer useful. The dark genius of this law is authorship. You stop reacting to circumstances and start designing the character others interact with. You choose what is revealed. You choose what is exaggerated. You choose what disappears. Most people let history define them. Powerful people edit history. Recreation demands destruction first. You must kill habits that expose you, cut associations that trap you, silence traits that invite disrespect. This is uncomfortable because it feels dishonest, but honesty is irrelevant when survival is at stake. Identity is not truth. Identity is strategy. Those who master this law treat life like a stage. They understand that perception is reality's gatekeeper. If people see you as limited, they limit you. If they see you as evolving, they follow. If they see mystery, they hesitate. So you shift the narrative. You adopt new symbols, speech, style, posture, silence. You control entrances and exits. You create distance between who you were and who you are becoming. Distance creates rebirth. There is a reason dark power favors reinvention. When people cannot anchor you to a past version, they lose leverage. Old insults no longer land. Old expectations collapse. Old enemies miscalculate. They are fighting a ghost, while you move as something else entirely. But recreation is not cosplay. It requires discipline. The mask must be consistent. The performance must be sustained. Sloppiness reveals seams, and once people catch you switching unconsciously, suspicion returns. You must become the role. This law also frees you from failure. When one version of you collapses, you do not defend it, you abandon it. You step into a new frame, a new arena, a new story. Those who cling to their past fall with it. Powerful figures are not loyal to identities, they are loyal to position. There is danger here too. Change too often and people lose trust. Reinvention must feel intentional, not desperate. You evolve forward, not sideways. Each version sharper, colder, more controlled. The final form of this law is authorship over fate. You stop asking who you are and start deciding who you are seen as. And in power dynamics, what is seen is what matters. In the end, Law 25, recreate yourself, teaches a ruthless truth. The world cages what it can define and frees what it cannot. Burn the old script, rewrite the role, return unrecognizable. Because in the shadows of power, those who design themselves cannot be owned by the past.
Law 26. Keep your hands clean. Power loves results, but it punishes fingerprints. Law 26 is about survival in the aftermath,
about how power is maintained not by avoiding dirty work, but by ensuring that someone else absorbs the stain. History does not destroy those who cause damage. It destroys those who are seen causing it. Reputation is fragile. Blame is corrosive, and once your hands are visibly dirty, every future move is judged through suspicion. The dark truth is this: unpleasant actions are unavoidable in power. Conflicts must be resolved, rivals must be neutralized, systems must be enforced. Someone will suffer. The only question is who carries the cost. Those who fail this law do the work themselves. They confront directly, they punish openly, they argue publicly, and when consequences follow, as they always do, the blame sticks. Enemies unite. Allies distance themselves. Your name becomes the problem. Powerful figures operate differently. They design outcomes without appearing to design them. They let others initiate. They let circumstances force decisions. They allow subordinates, systems, or events to act in their place. When the dust settles, they remain untouched. This law thrives in darkness because it understands human psychology. People need someone to blame. They want a face, a villain, a scapegoat. If you do not provide one, they will look harder, and eventually they will find you. So you redirect the spotlight. You use intermediaries, you use procedures, you use time delays, you use plausible explanations. The action happens, but not through you. This does not mean cowardice, it means architecture. You build structures where outcomes occur naturally, inevitably, and impersonally. You make consequences feel deserved, automatic, or self-inflicted. The most effective punishments feel like fate, not force. This law also protects you from moral backlash. When people associate you with calm, order, and distance, they excuse harsh outcomes. When they associate you with anger, vengeance, or involvement, they rebel. Clean hands preserve authority. There is also a strategic benefit. Insulation gives you flexibility. If a move backfires, you adjust quietly. If it succeeds, you claim stability, not aggression. Either way, your position remains intact. But there is a warning. Overuse of intermediaries creates suspicion. If people sense manipulation everywhere, trust evaporates. The art is subtlety. You act rarely. You move indirectly. You allow others to believe events unfolded on their own. Silence becomes your alibi. In the end, Law 26, Keep Your Hands Clean, teaches that power is not just about what you do, but about what you are never seen doing. Because in the final judgment of power, results are admired, but blame is remembered. And those with clean hands walk freely through the aftermath, while others burn in the smoke they created.
Law 27. Play on people's need to believe, to create a cult-like following. Let me talk to you directly. If you want power, real power, understand this first. People are desperate to believe in something. Not facts, not logic, not truth. They want meaning. They want direction. They want someone to tell them this chaos has a purpose. And if you don't give them that, someone else will. Law 27 is dark because it exposes how easily belief can be shaped and how dangerous it becomes when you're the one holding it.
You don't gain followers by being correct. You gain followers by being certain. When you speak with confidence, when you simplify the world into clear promises and enemies, people relax. Confusion exhausts them. Doubt scares them. They want relief, and belief is relief. So here's the uncomfortable truth. People don't want freedom as much as they say they do. They want guidance. If you present yourself as someone who knows the way, who has seen the truth, who offers clarity, purpose, or destiny, people will lean in, not because you forced them, but because they need it. And once belief takes hold, logic stops mattering. When someone believes in you, they defend you, they excuse your mistakes, they reinterpret reality in your favor. That's power. This law is not about religion alone. It shows up everywhere. Business leaders, influencers, politicians, gurus, even motivational figures. The structure is always the same. You promise transformation. You speak in simple absolutes. You position yourself as the source of meaning, and you make people feel chosen for listening. Here's where you need discipline. Never offer full clarity. Leave gaps. Mystery keeps belief alive. The moment everything is explained, faith weakens. You want followers filling in the blanks for you, because once they do, the belief feels personal. You also need rituals, language, symbols, repetition. Humans bond through shared signals. The more people repeat your words, wear your ideas, defend your vision, the more invested they become. And once someone invests identity into belief, walking away feels like death. But listen carefully. This law cuts both ways. If you promise too much, reality will expose you. If you reveal doubt, belief cracks. If you lose control of the narrative, the same faith that lifted you will turn violent. That's the risk. You don't dominate belief with force. You maintain it with consistency. You must always appear calm, always certain, always one step ahead. And you must never let followers see you negotiating power behind the scenes. Once they see mechanics instead of magic, the spell breaks. This law doesn't say be evil. It says understand the hunger you're dealing with. If you ignore it, you will always be led. If you understand it, you decide whether to lead or protect yourself from being consumed by it. Because belief is not rational. Belief is emotional, and emotion is the deepest lever on the human mind. So here's the real talk. If you don't control what people believe about you, they will believe something worse. And in the world of power, belief is not just influence, it's loyalty without force.
Law 28. Enter action with boldness. Listen to me. You don't lose because you're wrong. You lose because you hesitate. That pause, that second guessing, that quiet voice asking, "What if this fails?" That's where power slips through your fingers. Law 28 is brutal because it exposes a hard truth. Timid action invites resistance. Bold action crushes it before it forms. When you move hesitantly, people smell uncertainty. They test you. They poke holes. They delay, negotiate, and undermine. But when you move with boldness, clear, decisive, unapologetic, something strange happens. People fall in line.
Not because they agree, not because they understand, but because certainty intimidates doubt. Here's the real talk. Most people are scared. They're waiting for permission. They're watching to see who moves first. When you step forward with confidence, you become the reference point. Others adjust around you, not the other way around. Boldness creates momentum. Momentum creates belief. Belief creates obedience. And no, boldness doesn't mean recklessness. It means commitment without visible fear. You can calculate in private, you can worry in silence, but when you act as if retreat is not an option. Because the moment people think you might back down, they push harder. You've seen it, the meeting where the loudest voice wins, the deal where the firm offer gets accepted, the leader who decides while others discuss. That's Law 28 in motion. When you act boldly, you simplify the world for others. You remove ambiguity. You make the decision for them. And most people are relieved to let you do it. Here's where you mess up if you're not careful. You wait for perfect timing. You wait for full approval. You wait for confidence to appear. Confidence doesn't appear. It's created by action. Bold moves don't need consensus. They need conviction. Even if you're only 70% sure, decisive action often turns that 70% into reality because people help make bold decisions succeed. Hesitant decisions invite sabotage. Bold decisions recruit allies. There's also a psychological trap. Once you act boldly, people assume you know something they don't. They project intelligence, preparation, and authority onto you, even if you're learning as you go. Perception does half the work. But hear this clearly. Boldness is a one-way door. Enter it, and you must commit. Retreat after bold action destroys credibility faster than never acting at all. That's why timid people stay safe. They never risk exposure. And that's also why they never rise. You don't need to explain yourself endlessly. You don't need to apologize for decisiveness. You don't need to soften every edge. Power respects clarity. Power rewards commitment. So here's the advice, straight to you. When you decide, decide loudly. When you move, move fully. When you act, act like you're already in control. Because boldness doesn't guarantee success, but hesitation guarantees resistance. And in the world of power, those who enter action with boldness don't just change outcomes, they change how others behave around them.
Law 29. Plan all the way to the end. Let me be straight with you. Most people don't fail at the start. They fail near the finish. They get excited by momentum. They get drunk on early wins. They stop thinking right when thinking matters most. Law 29 exists because power is not about starting strong. It's about ending clean. You've seen it happen. Someone makes a bold move, gains traction, attracts attention, and then everything collapses. Not because the idea was bad, not because the execution was weak, but because they never asked one brutal question. What happens after this works? Power punishes short thinking. When you don't plan all the way to the end, you walk blindly into traps you built yourself. Success exposes you. It creates enemies. It raises expectations. And if you haven't prepared for that final stage, victory turns into vulnerability. Here's the real talk part.
When you plan, you're not just planning how to win, you're planning how to survive winning. You need to know, what will people demand once you succeed? Who will feel threatened? Who will take credit? Who will try to cut you down afterwards? If you don't answer those questions in advance, others will answer them for you. This law teaches you to think backwards. Start at the end. Visualize the aftermath. See the consequences before they arrive. Because every action creates reactions, and those reactions don't care about your intentions, only about your position. Planning to the end also means knowing when to stop. Most people destroy themselves by pushing too far. They keep attacking when the opponent is already broken. They keep expanding when consolidation is needed. They keep talking when silence would protect them. Victory creates temptation. Temptation creates exposure. You don't need everything. You need enough. Those who understand power know when to freeze the board. They lock in gains. They stabilize perception. They make their success look inevitable instead of aggressive. And by doing that, they turn enemies into observers and observers into acceptors. There's another dark truth here. People love beginnings. They tolerate struggle, but they fear endings, because endings reveal who's in control. If you don't control the ending, your enemies will rush in to rewrite it. They'll frame you as reckless, dangerous, lucky, overreaching, and once that narrative sticks, everything you built becomes fragile. Planning to the end protects your story. It tells you when to slow down, when to disappear briefly, when to let others take the spotlight, when to stop before greed exposes you. This law demands patience, the hardest discipline of all. You must resist the urge to celebrate too early. You must resist the urge to dominate openly. You must resist the ego that says, "I'm winning, so I'll keep going." Because unchecked momentum ends careers. So listen carefully. Before you act, ask yourself, what does this look like after it succeeds? Who benefits? Who loses? And how do I exit without bleeding? If you can't see the ending, don't start the move. Because in the world of power, those who plan all the way to the end don't just win battles, they remain standing when everyone else is cleaning up the wreckage.
Let me tell you something most people never understand. Effort impresses amateurs. Ease intimidates everyone else. You might think showing how hard you worked earns respect. Late nights, sacrifice, stress, sleepless grinding. But here's the uncomfortable truth. When people see your struggle, they stop seeing your power. Law 30 is about illusion, not lying, but presentation. Power looks calm. Power looks relaxed. Power looks like it didn't cost you anything. The moment you show sweat, you reveal limits. You reveal strain. You reveal how much effort it takes to move you. And once people know that, they know exactly where to apply pressure. This is real talk. If you want authority, you must hide the chaos behind the curtain. Think about how people react to competence. Someone who struggles loudly is pitied. Someone who succeeds quietly is feared. When something looks effortless, the mind assumes mastery, and mastery commands respect without explanation.
Effortlessness is psychological dominance. You don't explain how many failures it took. You don't narrate the pain. You don't advertise the difficulty. You deliver results, clean, simple, controlled. Because the more complex you make success look, the more replaceable you appear. People think anyone could do this with enough effort. But when it looks smooth, they think only you can do this. That belief is power. This law also protects you. When people believe your success is natural, they stop asking for your methods. They stop copying you accurately. They stop trying to replicate your process because they assume they can't. Meanwhile, you keep improving quietly while they admire from a distance. Effortlessness creates mystique. But here's where you mess up if you're not careful. You confuse humility with exposure. You overshare the grind. You wear exhaustion like a badge. That doesn't build power. It builds sympathy, and sympathy is weak currency. Power doesn't say, "Look how hard this was." Power says, "Of course this worked." And there's a darker layer. When you make things look easy, people underestimate the preparation behind you. They misjudge your depth. They challenge you casually and regret it later. Surprise becomes your ally. You don't win by proving how much you suffer. You win by making dominance look natural. That doesn't mean you don't work hard. It means you work invisible hours. You suffer privately. You refine silently. You prepare obsessively and reveal nothing. Public struggle invites competition. Public ease discourages it. So, here's the advice, straight to you. Do the hard work in silence. Hide the mess. Deliver with calm confidence. Let others think it came easy. Let them believe you're gifted, lucky, or effortless. Because in the world of power, what looks easy looks unbeatable, and what looks unbeatable rarely gets challenged.
Law 31. Control the options. Get others to play with the cards you deal. Let me be blunt with you. Freedom is often an illusion, and the most effective power move is letting people feel free while you decide the boundaries. Law 31 isn't about forcing anyone. It's about engineering choice. Most people think control looks like commands, orders, pressure. It doesn't. Real control looks like options, carefully selected options, where every path leads to your desired outcome. You don't say, "Do this." You say, "Which do you prefer?" And either way, you win. When people believe they are choosing, resistance disappears, pride stays intact. They defend the decision because it feels like theirs. That's the genius of this law. It recruits the ego to work for you. Here's the real talk. If you give people unlimited options, you lose control. If you give them no options, they rebel. But if you give them 2 or 3, all favorable to you, they relax and comply. You've seen this everywhere. Do you want option A or option B? When should we start, Monday or Tuesday? Which package works better for you? The question isn't what they choose. The question is who designed the menu. This law thrives in darkness because most people never notice the frame. They focus on the decision in front of them, not the structure around it. While they debate preferences, you've already decided the outcome.
And once they commit, they rationalize it. They say it was logical. They say it made sense. They say it was their call. That self-justification locks them in. This law also neutralizes opposition. When someone argues, you don't confront them head-on. You offer alternatives that redirect their energy. You absorb resistance and turn it into movement, just not in the direction they expected. You don't fight the current. You canalize it. There's a darker layer here you need to respect. People hate feeling trapped. The moment they sense manipulation, trust collapses. So your options must feel fair, reasonable, even generous. The trap only works if it doesn't feel like a trap. That means you must sometimes include an option that looks attractive but costs them more. Time, effort, risk, while the option you prefer looks easier, safer, cleaner. Most people choose comfort. You didn't force them, you invited them. This law also protects you from blame. If things go wrong, they chose. If things go right, you quietly benefit. Responsibility diffuses downward. Control remains with you. But hear this carefully. Never offer an option you can't live with. Never open a door you don't want walked through. Because once you give a choice, you must honor it, or your credibility collapses. So here's the advice, straight to you. Stop arguing outcomes. Start designing frameworks. Don't push people, position them. Because in the world of power, the one who controls the options never needs to raise their voice. They just watch others play the hand they were dealt.
Law 32. Play to people's fantasies. Let me talk to you straight. People don't live in reality. They tolerate it. What they crave, what actually moves them, is fantasy, hope, escape, a version of life that feels bigger, cleaner, easier, more meaningful than the one they're stuck in. Law 32 is dark because it tells you this. If you sell people the truth, they resist. If you sell them a dream, they follow. Reality is heavy. It reminds people of limits, failures, and time running out. Fantasy does the opposite. It lifts the weight. It whispers, "There's more for you. You're closer than you think." And when someone gives them that feeling, they protect that person fiercely. Here's the real talk part you need to hear. You don't gain power by telling people how things are. You gain power by showing them how things could be. That's why leaders promise futures, influencers sell lifestyles, brands sell identity, movements sell meaning. Facts inform, fantasies move. When you speak to people's fantasies, you bypass logic and go straight to desire. Desire doesn't argue. Desire wants to believe. And once belief kicks in, people start doing the work for you, defending you, justifying you, investing in you emotionally. This law works because most people are quietly disappointed with their lives. They feel unseen. They feel stuck. They feel ordinary. Fantasy gives them an exit without forcing change, at least at first. So you paint pictures, you simplify complexity, you avoid harsh truths. Not because you're lying, but because truth without hope feels like an attack. But listen carefully. Fantasy must be believable.
If it's too perfect, suspicion rises. If it's too vague, it fades. The best fantasies feel just within reach, close enough to taste, far enough to chase. This is where many people mess up. They overpromise, they turn dreams into guarantees, and when reality inevitably interferes, the spell breaks and followers turn violent. Fantasy must remain aspirational, not provable. You also need contrast. You must position yourself as the bridge between the fantasy and their current pain. Without pain, fantasy has no pull. Without you, fantasy has no path. You don't say, "I'll save you." You say, "This is possible, and I know the way." That subtlety matters. This law also protects you from scrutiny. When people are emotionally invested in a dream, they avoid details that threaten it. They overlook contradictions. They excuse delays. They defend you against critics because critics threaten the fantasy, not just you. That's power wrapped in hope. But here's the warning, because this law bites back hard. If you expose the mechanics behind the fantasy, you lose authority. If you show doubt, belief cracks. If you drag people into cold reality too fast, they resent you. You must manage the descent carefully. The strongest operators drip reality slowly, just enough to stay credible, never enough to kill the dream. So here's the advice, directly to you. If you want influence, stop leading with facts. Lead with vision. Lead with possibility. Lead with what people wish were true. Because in the world of power, those who control imagination control loyalty, and loyalty lasts longer than truth.
Law 33. Discover each man's thumbscrew. Listen closely. This one is not comfortable, but it's real. Everyone has a weakness. Not a flaw they advertise, a pressure point they protect. Law 33 is about finding it. You don't control people by overpowering them. You control them by understanding what they fear losing, what they crave, or what they hide. That hidden lever, the thing they can't afford to expose, that's the thumbscrew. And yes, everyone has one. The mistake most people make is assuming power comes from force or authority. It doesn't. Force creates resistance. Authority invites challenge. Leverage, however, works quietly. It doesn't argue. It doesn't threaten. It simply exists. Here's the real talk part, straight to you. If you don't know what moves someone emotionally, you're blind around them. You can't predict them. You can't persuade them. You can't protect yourself from them. You're reacting instead of positioning. So you observe. You listen for what they complain about. You watch what makes them defensive. You notice what they overcompensate for. You track what they brag about too much. Overcompensation is confession. People reveal their thumbscrews without realizing it. The insecure talk the loudest. The greedy negotiate the hardest. The proud react the fastest to disrespect. The fearful cling to status, titles, or approval. You don't need secrets. You need patterns. And once you see the pattern, you don't rush to use it. That's where amateurs fail. They expose the weakness too early. They confront, they threaten, they turn leverage into conflict. Real power is quieter.
You keep the knowledge to yourself. You let it sit. You let it mature. And when the moment comes, when resistance appears, when cooperation stalls, you apply just enough pressure to remind them what's at stake. Not publicly, not emotionally, subtly. A suggestion, a reminder, a situation that activates their fear or desire. They move not because you forced them, but because their own psychology pushed them. That's the dark genius of this law. You're not controlling people. You're letting their own weakness do the work. This law also protects you. When you know someone's thumbscrew, surprises disappear. You see manipulation coming. You sense betrayal before it happens. You understand why people act irrationally, because their pressure point is being touched. Knowledge becomes armor. But hear this clearly. There is danger here. If you misuse leverage, people eventually snap. If you humiliate, they seek revenge. If you expose the thumbscrew publicly, you create an enemy who has nothing left to lose. So, restraint is everything. The best leverage is rarely pulled fully. Its power lies in being known only to you. Like a blade kept sheathed, its presence matters more than its use. And here's the part most people don't like to admit. You have thumbscrews too. Your ego, your reputation, your need for control, your fear of being exposed. The moment someone discovers yours, the balance shifts. So, as you learn to read others, learn to hide yourself. Guard your reactions, limit what you reveal, control what people can use against you. Because, in the world of power, the person who knows the weakness and keeps silent about it holds the room without speaking.
Let me say this directly to you. No one wakes up deciding to respect you. They take cues from how you carry yourself. Law 34 is uncomfortable because it puts responsibility back where people avoid it, on your posture, your standards, your tolerance, your self-image. Power doesn't start when others crown you. It starts when you behave like you're already crowned. People mirror confidence. They follow certainty. They submit to self-respect. If you treat yourself like an option, people will negotiate you down. If you treat yourself like a privilege, people adjust their behavior automatically. This isn't arrogance, it's signal management. Here's the real talk. You don't need permission to act important. You need consistency. Royals don't beg. They don't over-explain. They don't rush to prove worth. They move at their own pace. They speak with finality. They don't react emotionally to every challenge because reaction implies equality, and equality invites disrespect. When you over-apologize, you shrink. When you over-justify, you doubt yourself publicly. When you accept poor treatment, you teach people how to treat you. Being royal is about boundaries. You decide what's acceptable. You decide what gets your time. You decide when you engage and when you walk away. And when those boundaries are crossed, you respond calmly but decisively. No drama, no begging, just consequences. That calm authority unsettles people more than anger ever could. This law also warns you about false humility. People mistake humility for weakness when it's not paired with strength. Downplaying yourself doesn't make you likable, it makes you forgettable. power respects presence, not self-erasure. You don't need to dominate rooms, you need to anchor them. Dress with intention, speak with purpose, pause without discomfort. Silence, when owned, becomes command. But listen, acting royal doesn't mean copying anyone else's crown. You don't imitate kings, you define your own standard and enforce it relentlessly. Your royalty can be quiet, sharp, minimal, intimidating, elegant, whatever fits you. The key is congruence. When your self-image, behavior, and boundaries align, people feel it. They may not like you, but they will respect you. And respect outlasts approval every time. There's a darker layer here. Once people accept your self-assigned authority, they stop testing you. They assume you belong. They hesitate before challenging, and hesitation is the doorway to control. But if you ever break character, if you chase validation, react emotionally, or accept disrespect, the illusion cracks. And once cracked, people rush in. So here's the advice, straight to you. Set your standard privately. Live it publicly. Defend it calmly. Don't wait to be treated like a king. Act like one, and let the world catch up. Because in the world of power, those who honor themselves first teach others how to do the same.
Law 35. Master the art of timing. Listen to you for a second. Talent without timing is wasted. Effort without timing is ignored. Truth without timing gets you punished. Law 35 is ruthless because it exposes why smart people still lose. They move at the wrong moment. They say the right thing too early. They act correctly too late. And timing turns their intelligence into a liability. Power is not just what you do, it's when you do it. Here's the real talk. The same action can make you a hero or destroy you, depending entirely on timing. Speak too soon and you sound arrogant. Speak too late and you sound weak. Push before the room is ready and you're labeled reckless. Wait too long and someone else takes the prize. Timing decides meaning. Most people rush because they're emotional. They react to pressure. They confuse urgency with importance, and that impatience exposes them. Others learn their rhythm. Predictability forms, and once your timing is known, you're easy to block. Masters of power slow everything down. They watch cycles. They feel momentum. They wait for cracks. They don't argue with reality. They enter when reality is tired. This law teaches you to read the room before you move. Who's losing influence? Who's overextended? Who's desperate to decide? When people are uncertain, timing favors clarity. When people are confident, timing favors silence. You move after resistance weakens, not before. There's a darker layer here you need to respect. When you act too early, people unite against you. When you act at the perfect moment, they accept the outcome as inevitable. It feels less like force and more like fate. That's real power, making your move look overdue, not aggressive. Timing also protects you from blame. If conditions are ripe, consequences are blamed on circumstance, not you. If conditions are wrong, you become the villain, even if you were right. So you wait. You let others exhaust themselves. You let mistakes accumulate. You let the environment justify your move for you.
This law demands patience, the kind that feels like weakness to impatient people. But patience isn't passivity, it's positioning. You're not idle, you're preparing while others burn energy. And when you finally move, you move fast. No hesitation, no explanation, no retreat. Because good timing turns boldness into inevitability. Here's the advice straight to you. Stop reacting. Start observing. Ask yourself, is the room ready for this? Is resistance tired or energized? Is silence stronger than action right now? If the answer isn't clear, wait. Because in the world of power, those who master timing rarely look rushed and never look surprised.
Law 36. Disdain things you cannot have. Ignoring them is the best revenge. Let me talk to you honestly. Nothing exposes weakness faster than wanting something you can't reach. People think anger is power. They think confrontation is strength. They think reacting proves confidence. It doesn't. Reaction proves attachment. Law 36 cuts straight through ego and tells you something cold but freeing. The moment you show frustration over what you can't control, you give it power over you. And power, real power, never chases, never begs, never explains. It disdains. Here's the real talk part you need to hear. When something is denied to you, respect, access, recognition, revenge, the instinct is to fight it, to complain, to argue, to demand fairness. But every emotional reaction advertises desire, and desire tells others exactly where to hurt you. If they know you want it, they can withhold it. If they know it upsets you, they can repeat it. If they know you care, they control you. Ignoring is not weakness. Ignoring is psychological domination. When you act as if something doesn't matter, you drain it of meaning. You remove its ability to provoke. You turn someone else's weapon into dead weight. Silence starves drama. Indifference suffocates manipulation. This law works because people want reaction. Enemies want outrage. Rivals want acknowledgement. Provocateurs want emotional proof that they matter. When you give them nothing, they unravel. They expected noise. They get emptiness. And emptiness terrifies insecure people. There's a darker layer here. By ignoring what you can't have, you rewrite the hierarchy. You signal that it is beneath you, not above you, and perception follows signal. People begin questioning the value of what was denied to you. Scarcity flips, interest fades. Disdain reverses leverage. But be careful. This law is not about fake indifference. People can smell pretending. You must actually let go emotionally. That's the hard part. That's the discipline. You don't suppress anger. You dissolve attachment. You redirect focus on things that move you forward. You invest in arenas where you hold advantage. You build alternatives so strong that what you couldn't have becomes irrelevant. Nothing humiliates denial like replacement. This law also protects your reputation. Public anger makes you look desperate. Public indifference makes you look untouchable.
and untouchable people are not played with casually. The strongest response is often no response. But let me warn you, because this law bites the impatient. If you ignore something you can change, you miss opportunity. Disdain must be strategic, not lazy. You ignore what is unreachable for now, not what requires effort. Timing still matters. So, here's the advice directly to you. If you can't have it, don't chase it. If you can't control it, don't react to it. If you can't change it today, strip it of emotional value. Move on like it was never important. Because in the world of power, the one who appears indifferent controls the emotional temperature, and the one who controls emotion controls the room.
Law 37. Create compelling spectacles. Let me talk to you plainly. People don't remember facts. They remember images. They don't follow logic. They follow feeling. And that's why Law 37 is so dangerous and so effective. If you want influence, if you want authority to stick, you don't just explain your power, you stage it. Reality is dull, spectacle is unforgettable. Here's the real talk. Most people are overwhelmed. They don't have the time or energy to analyze, so they let emotion decide. Color, drama, symbolism, these cut straight past skepticism and land in memory. When something looks powerful, people assume it is powerful. That's not stupidity, that's human wiring. Spectacles work because they simplify complexity. They compress meaning into a single moment, a gesture, a scene, a reveal. When done right, one image does more than 1,000 explanations. Think about it. A dramatic entrance, a bold announcement, a public win, a symbolic act. People replay those moments in their minds. They tell others, they post, they amplify, and suddenly your presence is larger than your actual action. That's leverage. Here's where you need discipline. Spectacle without substance is a spark. It flashes and dies, but spectacle attached to intent becomes a weapon. You choose moments carefully. You don't perform constantly. You wait, then strike with imagery that frames you as decisive, dominant, or inevitable. Scarcity makes spectacle hit harder. This law also protects you from scrutiny. When people are emotionally moved, they stop questioning details. They accept the narrative you give them. And once a story takes hold, facts chase it instead of the other way around. You don't argue perception, you create it. There's a darker layer you must respect. Spectacle creates expectation. If you overuse it, you cheapen it. If you escalate too fast, you trap yourself into constant performance. Power doesn't mean always being loud. It means choosing when to be unforgettable. And here's the warning. Never let others control the spectacle about you. If you don't define the image, critics will. Silence leaves a vacuum, and vacuums get filled with stories you won't like. So you design the scene, you pick the moment, you control the lighting. This doesn't mean lying, it means framing. You show the part of reality that serves the outcome. You make meaning visible. You turn results into symbols. Here's the advice, straight to you. Stop explaining, start staging. When you act,
Do it with intention people can see. When you speak, give them an image they can't forget. When you win, make it look inevitable. Because in the world of power, those who master spectacle don't just influence minds, they own memory.
Law 38. Think as you like, but behave like others. I'm going to talk to you without sugarcoating this. Being different is not the danger. Showing it too early is. Law 38 exists because power punishes those who stand out before they're untouchable. You can think however you want. You can disagree internally. You can see the flaws, the lies, the inefficiencies. But the moment you act too differently, you paint a target on your back. And targets get hit. Here's the real talk. Most people don't hate ideas. They hate threats to normalcy. When you behave differently, you remind them that their way might be wrong. That makes them uncomfortable. And discomfort quickly turns into hostility. So they mock you, they isolate you, they label you arrogant, weird, or dangerous. Not because you're wrong, but because you broke the pattern. Powerful people understand this early. They blend in while thinking independently. They wear the uniform while planning the escape. They nod along while mapping a different future. Outward conformity buys time. Inner independence builds leverage. This law is about camouflage. You don't announce that you're smarter. You don't show contempt for tradition. You don't correct everyone publicly. You let the system underestimate you. Because once people believe you're one of them, their guard drops. You're allowed access. You're trusted with information. You're included in decisions. And inclusion gives you vision. Vision others don't realize you're collecting. That's when thinking differently becomes dangerous in your favor. There's a dark irony here. Those who loudly reject the system get crushed by it. Those who quietly understand it eventually reshape it. You don't fight norms head-on. You use them. You move inside them. You let others enforce the rules while you study their weaknesses. But hear this carefully. This law is not about losing yourself. You don't become what you pretend to be. You don't absorb the values you disagree with. You don't stop critically thinking. You separate mind from mask. The mask protects you. The mind prepares you. And timing decides when the mask comes off. Because when you finally have position, protection, and momentum, that's when you can break patterns safely. That's when difference becomes leadership instead of rebellion. That's when people follow instead of attack. Until then, blending in is not cowardice, it's strategy. Here's the advice straight to you. Think freely. Question everything. See further than the room. But behave in a way that keeps you invisible until you're ready to be unavoidable. Because in the world of power, those who reveal their difference too early get eliminated, while those who hide it wisely decide when the world changes.
Law 39. Stir up waters to catch fish. Let me talk to you straight. This one is dangerous if you don't respect it. Calm people think clearly. Agitated people make mistakes. Law 39 is about control through chaos, not loud chaos, but emotional disturbance. When people are angry, insecure, or confused, they stop thinking strategically.
They react, they reveal, they overcommit, and that's when you catch them. Still waters hide intentions. Disturbed waters expose them. Here's the real talk. If someone stays calm, they can protect themselves. If they stay emotional, they can't. So you don't attack logic, you disrupt emotion. You provoke just enough discomfort to pull reactions to the surface. A delayed response, a subtle insult, a strategic silence, a move that threatens ego without explanation. You're not starting a fight, you're triggering imbalance. When people lose emotional equilibrium, they tell you everything you need to know. Their priorities surface, their fears show, their alliances crack. They rush decisions they would normally calculate, and once they move impulsively, you see the map. This law works because ego hates uncertainty. People want closure, they want explanation, they want to feel respected. When you deny them that, when you stay calm while they spiral, you reverse the power dynamic. You become the stable point, they become the variable. Control flows to the calm observer. But hear this carefully. This law is surgical, not explosive. If you stir the waters too violently, everyone sees you as the source. You become the villain. Resistance unites, power evaporates. The goal is subtle disturbance that looks accidental or ambiguous. You let them argue, you let them accuse, you let them overreact. And while they're busy reacting, you collect leverage. There's a darker layer here. Once someone reacts emotionally in public, their credibility weakens. People remember outbursts. They question judgment. Meanwhile, your calm silence looks like maturity, even if you caused the storm. Perception rewards composure. But this law demands discipline. You must stay emotionally neutral. You must resist enjoying the chaos. You must not escalate, because the moment you get pulled into emotion, you lose the high ground. Now you're just another fish in stirred water. This law also protects you defensively. When others try to provoke you, recognize the tactic. Stay still. Don't take the bait. Let their agitation expose them instead. So here's the advice, straight to you. When someone is too comfortable, disturb them slightly. When someone is too confident, introduce doubt. When someone is hiding, make them react. But always stay calm, always stay unreadable, always stay above the waterline. Because in the world of power, the one who controls emotion controls movement, and the one who moves last wins.
Law 40. Despise the free lunch. Let me talk to you plainly. This one exposes traps most people walk into smiling. Nothing valuable is ever free, and when something looks free, you are the price. Law 40 exists because power always has a cost, and the most dangerous costs are the ones you don't see up front. Free lunches create hidden obligations. They blur boundaries. They quietly put you in someone else's debt, and debt is leverage. Here's the real talk. When you accept something for nothing, you surrender control. You give the other side the right to expect, to demand, to influence.
Even if they never say it out loud, the imbalance exists, and imbalance always favors the giver. People who live on freebies get cheapened. They lose urgency, they lose independence, they lose respect. Powerful people pay their way, even when it hurts, because payment keeps relationships clean, it keeps motives visible, it keeps you unowned. When you pay, you owe nothing. When you accept free, you owe something later. This law is especially dangerous in disguise. Free advice, free favors, free access, free exposure, free opportunities. They often come wrapped in generosity, but underneath is expectation, and expectation is a hook. Those who understand power insist on fair exchange. They prefer clear transactions over vague kindness. They'd rather pay now than be collected on later with interest. There's also a psychological edge here. When you pay, you value the outcome more. When you receive for free, you take it lightly. People respect what costs them something. Others respect you more when they see you're not desperate enough to accept handouts. Independence signals strength. Dependence signals vulnerability. This law also protects your reputation. Those who accept too many favors get labeled unreliable, manipulable, owned. And once that label sticks, your autonomy erodes quietly. But hear this clearly. This law is not about arrogance or refusing help. It's about clarity. If someone gives you something, make the exchange explicit. Pay it back. Trade value. Close the loop. Never let debt linger, because lingering debt is silent control. So here's the advice, straight to you. If it's free, ask why. If it feels generous, look for the hook. If you accept, balance the scale immediately. Pay your way, protect your independence, keep your leverage. Because in the world of power, nothing costs more than what you didn't pay for.
Law 41. Avoid stepping into a great man's shoes. Listen to you for a moment. This law saves careers and destroys egos. When someone legendary leaves a position, the seat looks powerful. What it really is cursed. Law 41 exists because following a great predecessor is one of the most dangerous positions in power. Expectations are unreal, comparisons are constant, and no matter what you do, you are measured against a ghost that people already worship. And ghosts don't age, they don't fail, they don't make mistakes. You do. Here's the real talk. When you step directly into a great man's shoes, you inherit his enemies, his standards, and his mythology without the patience people once gave him. Your success will be called luck, your mistakes will be called incompetence, and your authority will always feel borrowed. You are never judged as you. You are judged as not him. That's the trap. Power hates comparison. Comparison kills authority. The moment people say the old one would have done it better, you're already losing, even if you're objectively competent.
So what do? You break continuity. You don't imitate. You don't honor excessively. You don't promise to carry on the legacy. That language binds you to a shadow. Instead, you change the rules of the game. You redefine the role. You shift priorities. You alter style, rhythm, and expectations so comparison becomes impossible. You don't try to be better. You try to be different. Different creates space. Space creates authority. This law is dark because it demands courage most people don't have. Ego wants to prove worth by measuring up. Power demands you refuse the measurement entirely. You say, quietly but firmly, this era is over, a new one begins. That doesn't mean disrespect, it means distance. There's another layer you need to understand. People romanticize the past when they fear the present. They use legends as weapons against change. If you play into nostalgia, they will keep you small. If you challenge it carefully, they are forced to recalibrate. And recalibration creates leadership. But timing matters. If you move too fast, you look arrogant. If you move too slow, you look weak. So you introduce changes gradually but consistently. You let results speak. You let outcomes justify difference. Over time, people stop asking how you compare and start asking how things worked before you arrived. That's when the shadow fades. Here's the advice, straight to you. Never follow greatness by imitation. Never compete with memory. Never let nostalgia define your authority. Create a new standard. Change the terrain. Force comparison to collapse. Because in the world of power, those who chase legends stay second forever. But those who redefine the game become the new reference point.
Law 42. Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will scatter. Let me talk to you plainly. This law separates amateurs from operators. Chaos rarely comes from the crowd. It comes from who's leading them. Law 42 is ruthless because it forces you to stop fighting symptoms and start targeting sources. Most people waste energy arguing with followers, confronting noise, and managing endless resistance when the real problem sits quietly at the center. Power doesn't flow evenly, it concentrates. There is always a shepherd, a voice people listen to, a figure who gives permission to resist, complain, or rebel. And as long as that shepherd stands, the sheep remain organized. Here's the real talk. If you attack the group directly, they unite against you. If you attack individuals randomly, you create martyrs. But if you neutralize the leader, the structure collapses on its own. People don't like uncertainty. They need direction. When the shepherd is removed, discredited, distracted, isolated, or neutralized, the group loses confidence. Infighting starts, loyalty fractures, fear replaces unity, and fear scatters faster than force. This law doesn't mean violence, it means disruption at the source. You expose the leader's credibility, you cut off their communication, you remove their access, influence, or legitimacy. Once the leader can't lead, the followers don't know what to do next.
There's a psychological truth here you need to understand. Most people don't rebel independently. They rebel together, and togetherness requires leadership. Remove the leadership, and rebellion turns into confusion. Confusion kills momentum. This law also protects you from endless conflict. Instead of fighting 10 battles, you fight one decisively. Instead of managing noise forever, you silence the signal. One move, one target, systemic collapse. But hear this carefully. Timing matters. Strike too early, and the shepherd becomes a martyr. Strike too late, and the movement hardens. You wait until doubts already exist, then you act. You don't create opposition, you finish it. This law also works defensively. When people come after you, understand this. They're often being directed. Don't lash out at the crowd. Identify who's pointing them at you. That's where your focus goes. Cut the head. The body follows. Here's the advice, straight to you. Stop arguing with noise. Stop reacting to crowds. Find the voice behind the movement. Remove it cleanly, quietly, strategically. Because in the world of power, those who strike the source end wars quickly, while those who fight the crowd drown in endless resistance.
Law 43. Work on the hearts and minds of others. Let me speak to you directly. This is where power stops being force and becomes control. You can command behavior for a while. You can scare people into compliance. But if you want power that lasts, you have to go deeper. You have to reach how people feel and how they think. Law 43 exists because obedience without belief is fragile. The moment pressure lifts, resistance returns. Fear fades. Rules get broken. But when people believe in what you represent, when they feel understood, control becomes voluntary. And voluntary control is the strongest kind. Here's the real talk. People don't fight hardest for ideas. They fight for identity. If you want influence, stop trying to win arguments. Start shaping narratives. Give people a story where supporting you makes sense emotionally and mentally. You don't say, do this because I said so. You make them think, this is who I am. That's when loyalty forms. This law teaches you to meet people where they already are. You don't attack their beliefs head on. You enter them. You acknowledge their fears. You validate their frustrations. You speak their language. And once they feel seen, they open the door. Understanding disarms. When people feel ignored, they resist. When they feel humiliated, they rebel. When they feel understood, they cooperate. That's not kindness, that's leverage. There's a darker layer here you need to respect. You don't change hearts with logic alone. Logic threatens ego. Logic exposes contradiction. Hearts close when they feel attacked. Minds shut down when they feel judged. So you move slowly. You seed ideas instead of forcing them. You let people arrive at conclusions themselves. You allow them to believe it was their idea all along. That illusion matters.
This law also protects you from backlash. When people feel included in the narrative, they defend it. They justify your decisions to others. They absorb criticism meant for you. You don't need to silence dissent. Your supporters do it for you. That's influence multiplied. But here's the warning, because this law can turn toxic fast. Manipulating hearts without responsibility creates fanaticism. Fanaticism burns hot and then burns everything down. You must guide emotion, not inflame it endlessly. Stability requires trust, not constant stimulation. The strongest leaders don't keep people angry, they keep them aligned. So here's the advice, straight to you. If you want cooperation, listen first. If you want loyalty, respect identity. If you want control, shape meaning, not orders. Talk to people's fears, hopes, and pride, not just their logic. Because in the world of power, those who command bodies rule briefly, but those who shape hearts and minds rule quietly, deeply, and for a very long time.
Law 44. Disarm and infuriate with the mirror effect. I'm going to talk to you straight, because this law messes with people's heads more than any attack ever could. Most people expect resistance. They prepare for confrontation. They brace for opposition. What they don't know how to handle is themselves. Law 44 is psychological warfare at its quietest. You don't argue, you don't explain, you don't fight back the way they expect. Instead, you reflect their behavior back at them, calmly, precisely, without emotion. And that reflection does two things at once. It disarms them, and it drives them insane. Here's the real talk. When someone attacks you, insults you, manipulates you, or plays games, they're counting on reaction, anger, defense, explanation. That reaction gives them control. It tells them they hit something real. The mirror takes that away. You respond with their own energy, their tone, their pace, their tactics, but stripped of emotion. They delay, you delay. They give vague answers, you do the same. They play polite while being hostile, you match the politeness perfectly. Nothing extra, nothing less. And suddenly the power dynamic flips. Why? Because people are rarely aware of how they behave. When you mirror them, you force them to experience their own tactics from the outside, and that exposure is deeply uncomfortable. They feel mocked, even if you never insult them. They feel challenged, even if you never argue. They feel trapped, because they can't accuse you of doing anything wrong. You're just reflecting. This law works because ego hates symmetry. When someone sees themselves clearly, they either change or explode. Most explode. And when they do, you stay calm. Their overreaction makes them look unstable. Your composure makes you look in control. That contrast is devastating. There's a darker layer here. The mirror doesn't just frustrate, it reveals. People escalate when they feel exposed. They say too much. They show impatience. They drop the mask. And once that happens, everyone else starts seeing what you already knew. The mirror turns private flaws into public behavior without you lifting a finger. But hear this carefully. This law requires discipline.
If you mirror with sarcasm, you look petty. If you mirror emotionally, you lose the advantage. If you overdo it, people catch on. The mirror must feel natural. You're not mocking. You're not teaching a lesson. You're simply matching reality. This law is especially powerful against manipulators, narcissists, and passive-aggressive players. They rely on imbalance. The moment you remove it, their strategies collapse. They want dominance. You give symmetry, and symmetry suffocates them. But here's the warning, because this blade cuts both ways. Mirroring works best temporarily. Long-term, it creates cold relationships. Use it to neutralize, not to build trust. Once balance is restored, you switch tactics. So here's the advice, straight to you. When someone tries to control you, don't oppose them, reflect them. When someone disrespects you subtly, mirror it calmly. When someone plays games, let them play with themselves. Because in the world of power, nothing unsettles a manipulator more than seeing their own behavior staring back at them, quietly, patiently, and without mercy.
Law 45. Preach the need for change, but never reform too much at once. Let me talk to you honestly. This law saves reformers from getting destroyed by the very people they're trying to improve. People say they want change. What they really want is familiarity with a new label. Law 45 exists because sudden change feels like an attack on identity. And when identity feels threatened, people don't debate, they resist, sabotage, and rebel. Here's the real talk. If you push too much change too fast, you don't look visionary, you look dangerous. People cling to habits because habits are safe. They know the rules. They know how to survive inside them. When you threaten those structures overnight, you force people into fear, and fear turns allies into enemies. Power doesn't smash tradition. Power co-opts it. This law teaches you to sell change as continuity. You speak the language of progress, but you move in small, controlled steps. You promise improvement while preserving the symbols people are emotionally attached to. You say, this is an evolution, not everything you knew was wrong. Because the second sentence humiliates, and humiliation creates resistance. Here's the dark truth you need to understand. People don't oppose change because it's bad. They oppose change because it makes them feel obsolete. So you protect their dignity while you reshape the system. You keep old rituals while quietly changing outcomes. You keep familiar faces while shifting real power. You keep comforting language while rewriting rules underneath. They feel respected. You gain control. This law works because humans adapt slowly. Gradual change feels natural. It gives people time to rationalize, adjust, and convince themselves they were always on board. By the time they realize how much has changed, they're already living inside the new structure. And at that point, reversal is impossible. There's a psychological trick here. When change is slow, people defend it. They say, this makes sense. They say, it's not that different. They say, we've always done it this way, even when they haven't. That self-justification locks in compliance. But hear this clearly. This law demands patience. You will want to move faster. You will see inefficiencies. You will feel urgency. Ignore that impulse. Impatience kills reformers faster than opposition. History is filled with people who were right and removed because they pushed truth without timing. You don't win by being correct. You win by being acceptable. There's also a warning here. If you change nothing, you stagnate. If you change everything, you explode. The art is controlled transformation. You identify what truly matters, you protect what people emotionally need, and you reform everything else quietly, steadily, relentlessly. So here's the advice straight to you. Talk big about the future. Move slowly in the present. Let people keep their symbols while you take control of reality. Because in the world of power, those who reform too fast become martyrs, but those who change things gradually become architects of the new order.
Law 46. Never appear too perfect. Let me talk to you straight, because this law is where a lot of powerful people slip. Perfection doesn't inspire, it provokes. Law 46 exists because flawless people don't get admired for long, they get resented. When you appear too perfect, you remind others of their own shortcomings, and nothing turns admiration into hatred faster than that comparison. Here's the real talk. People don't want to feel inferior around you. They want to feel comfortable. If you never make mistakes, never struggle, never show weakness, you don't look strong, you look threatening. And threatened people don't stay loyal. They look for cracks. They wait for you to slip. Sometimes they help you slip. Envy is quiet, resentment is patient, and perfection feeds both. This law teaches you to lower the temperature. You reveal a small flaw. You admit a harmless mistake. You laugh at yourself, strategically. Not because you're insecure, but because you're smart. A controlled imperfection humanizes you. It disarms envy. It makes people relax around you. They stop seeing you as a measuring stick and start seeing you as someone they can coexist with. And coexistence buys peace. There's a darker layer here. When people feel inferior, they unite against the source. That's how courts turn on favorites. That's how teams sabotage high performers. That's how leaders get cut down to size. You don't fall because you're wrong. You fall because you're too far above. So you come down just enough. You let others shine occasionally. You give credit publicly. You accept help visibly, even if you don't need it. That balance keeps you untouchable. But listen carefully. This law is not about playing small. You don't hide competence. You don't fake weakness. You don't apologize for success. You simply package dominance with humility. There's a difference. Real power is confident enough to be imperfect on purpose. It understands that survival often matters more than brilliance. It knows when to shine and when to dim the light so the room doesn't turn on you. Here's the advice straight to you. Let people see you win, but not effortlessly every time. Let them admire you, but not feel crushed by you. Let them feel close, even if you're always ahead. Because in the world of power, the flawless are attacked, the human are protected, and the wise control both. Law 47. Do not go past the mark you aimed for. In victory, learn when to stop. Listen to you carefully. This is where winners lose themselves. Most people don't fall while climbing. They fall after they've already won. Law 47 exists because victory intoxicates. It dulls judgment. It whispers just a little more. And that whisper has destroyed more power than failure ever could. Here's the real talk. When you win, the room changes. Eyes sharpen. Enemies recalculate. Allies reassess your threat level. The moment you keep pushing, celebrating too loudly, expanding too aggressively, humiliating opponents, you stop looking strong and start looking dangerous. And dangerous gets dealt with. Power isn't just about taking ground, it's about holding it. The fatal mistake is momentum addiction. You mistake success for permission. You believe the rules have changed. They haven't. They're just waiting for you to overstep. History punishes overreach. The conqueror who keeps conquering creates coalitions. The leader who keeps winning creates resentment. The negotiator who keeps squeezing creates rebellion. When people feel cornered, they don't comply, they plot. This law teaches restraint at the most difficult moment, when you feel unstoppable. That's when you must slow down. That's when you must consolidate. That's when you must disappear briefly. Because restraint after victory looks like wisdom. Excess after victory looks like arrogance. Here's the darker layer. When you stop at the right moment, people fill in the silence with respect. They assume you could do more, but chose not to. That choice projects confidence and control. It makes your power feel measured, not desperate. But when you keep pushing, people stop admiring and start bracing. They look for cracks, they justify resistance, they unite. And unity against you is the beginning of the end. This law also protects your legacy. Winning once is impressive. Winning twice is strong. Winning endlessly invites backlash. So you learn to freeze the board. You let time normalize your success. You allow others to adjust. You turn enemies into spectators. You trade dominance for stability temporarily. That's not weakness, that's mastery. Here's the advice straight to you. Know your original goal. Hit it cleanly, then stop. Resist the urge to prove more. Resist the thrill of excess. Resist the ego that wants applause. Because in the world of power, the greatest danger is not losing, it's winning and forgetting when to put the sword away.
Law 48. Assume formlessness. Let me talk to you one last time, because this law is the end game. Every structure eventually breaks. Every system eventually gets exposed. Every fixed identity eventually becomes a target. Law 48 exists because permanence is a myth, and power that refuses to adapt dies loudly. If the earlier laws taught you how to rise, this one teaches you how to survive everything that comes after. Here's the real talk. The moment people can define you, they can attack you. The moment they can predict you, they can trap you. The moment you solidify, you become breakable. So you don't harden, you flow. Formlessness means refusing to be pinned down. It means you change shape before pressure can crush you. You adapt before resistance can organize. You evolve before enemies finish analyzing your last move. Rigid power snaps. Fluid power survives. Think about water. It doesn't argue with obstacles. It doesn't announce its path. It doesn't resist force head-on. It goes around. It goes under. It waits, and then it erodes mountains. That's the mindset. When the environment shifts, you shift with it. When rules change, you rewrite yourself. When attention becomes dangerous, you disappear. When invisibility becomes weakness, you reappear differently. No fixed style, no fixed strategy, no fixed persona. This law terrifies people who need identity to feel safe. But power isn't safety, it's responsiveness. The more adaptable you are, the harder it is for anyone to land a decisive blow. Enemies can't plan against what won't stay still. Here's the darker layer you need to respect. People cling to what made them successful. Old methods, old reputations, old victories, and those attachments become anchors that pull them under when the tide changes. You don't get sentimental. You don't defend outdated versions of yourself. You don't argue with reality. You shed skins. Formlessness also protects you emotionally. When you're not attached to one role, one image, or one outcome, you can walk away without breaking. Loss doesn't define you. Failure doesn't trap you. Criticism doesn't land. Nothing sticks because there's nothing fixed to stick to. But hear this carefully. Formlessness is not chaos. You don't drift aimlessly. You don't abandon purpose. You don't become invisible forever. You keep direction without rigidity. You keep intent without attachment. You keep moving without announcing shape. That balance is mastery. Here's the final advice, straight to you. Never let success freeze you. Never let identity trap you. Never let the past decide your next form. When the world tightens, loosen. When it loosens, strike. When it watches, vanish. When it forgets, return, changed. Because in the world of power, those who assume formlessness cannot be cornered, cannot be contained, and cannot be destroyed, only adapted. After the 48 laws, what you do with power. If you made it this far, listen carefully. This part is for you, not the book. The laws are finished, but power isn't. These laws don't make you good or bad. They make you aware. And awareness is dangerous, because once you see how power works, you can never unsee it. You'll notice patterns in rooms you enter. You'll hear motives behind polite words. You'll feel shifts before they're announced. That's the cost of clarity. Here's the real talk nobody tells you. Power doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you already were. If you use these laws recklessly, you'll burn bridges fast, and yourself with them.
If you use them blindly, you'll become the very thing you hate. And if you use them without restraint, you'll attract enemies you can't outrun. The laws aren't commands, they're diagnostics. They help you read the game. They help you recognize manipulation before it touches you. They help you move with intention instead of reaction. And sometimes, this matters most, they help you walk away before a trap closes. You don't need to use every law. You need to recognize when one is being used on you. That's real power. Because the strongest position isn't domination, it's choice. Choice to engage, choice to wait, choice to disappear, choice to return changed. Remember this. Power loves silence. Power respects timing. Power survives through adaptation. If you carry anything forward, let it be this. Never become predictable, never become rigid, and never confuse ego for strength. Win quietly, hold lightly, move when it matters. And when the world tries to define you, smile, change shape, and move on. Because the ones who last aren't the loudest, aren't the cruelest, aren't the most visible. They're the ones who understand the game and never let the game understand them.
I hope you found this video enjoyable and informative. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more amazing content just like this. I hope you found this video enjoyable and informative. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more amazing content just like this.